Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Hoops Boys Pod. The playoffs are among us. The regular season has ended, and we want to start the show off today talking about some of the best matchups in our opinion. And for me, I want to start with the Warriors and Nuggets matchup out west, the 3 and 6. These are two high-powered offenses. They've both been banged up all year. Warriors got back majority of their players, but I think this is going to be one of the best early playoff matchups that we're going to see. Steph is back, Draymond's back, so I predict the Warriors to win in 6, even though I think the Nuggets probably have this year's MVP again and Nikola Jokic, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a high-powered matchup. Any thoughts on this? Greg, let's start with you because you're on my screen. So let's start with you.
Sure thing. I agree. I think that's a great matchup. Definitely one of the best first rounders. The Golden State, as we know, down the stretch, the whole key has been recovering from an injury. It seems like they have it. Clay. I wouldn't usually care about an end of the season game in most cases when it's just for seeding if you're not sure. But I think Clay put up 40 the other night, if I'm right.
Yeah, he did.
That for me is that he's the guy that needed to get into game shape, get his legs under him. That to me, even though it's just one game, is a big deal for me. When you now have him at somewhat of a high level and Draymond, you have to respect immensely what Jokic, as you alluded to, in Denver's done. I do wonder over the course of a long series how much help he'll get. And not that I hate their supporting cast, but without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter, who they recently pretty much ruled out, both of them, I think Golden State will prevail. I think Jokic will have a couple of monster games as he always does. Quickly about him, when I saw the stat the other day, which was incredible, first player ever in NBA history, 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 500 assists. They've been playing hoops a long time. That's incredible.
That's impressive.
So,
yeah.
Yes. So I think he will enable that to be a series. I think the depth of Golden State will prevail in the end.
I agree. Shad, what you got on this series?
I got Golden State, but I think this is probably the only team that Golden State could have beat in the first round. I think Golden State got lucky. They're not going to be 100% healthy, but they're playing a team with worse health than them. And the Nuggets don't have two of the three best players with Porter and Murray out. Not sure if Steph is going to play, but I don't think they really need him for this type of matchup. The Warriors, I'm just not feeling this year. I think Clay is. I would have traded Clay. I think he's messing up the growth of Jordan Poole, who's becoming, looks like an all-star type of player, probably maybe even like most improved player of the year. I just think when Clay's there, they try to force him too much into the action. They try to, act like this is 2016, pretty much. And they're a much older team. Got to face a lot of these guys are, on the back end of their prime if they're still in it. But I think they lucked out. I think they would have played just about anybody else besides maybe like the Timberwolves. I think they would have lost, the series. I just think Golden State's, time is done. I don't think the chemistry is really there anymore. They haven't got their, 3-star players. I think they play like 11 minutes together this year.
Yeah.
So I just think, they're gonna win this round based on who they're playing, but I don't see them being a threat or anything like that, and they just lucked out with the matchup.
Do you think they could bottle up some of that stuff they had in the beginning of the season when they looked like, oh, the Warriors are about to win the championship again? And this is before they even got Clay back. Do you think that they could turn it back on?
Yeah, Clay's out. Like I said, I just feel like Clay messes up the chemistry too much. Like they were playing free flow, kind of fast paced basketball, didn't really care who really got the shots. And I feel like they try to force Clay to get 20 shots a game. And that's just
Yeah.
like nobody on that team really was like that besides kind of Steph. And he's really not the force it type of player. He just kind of flows with it. I think Clay is like you just pass it to him and he shoots. He's not really a playmaker. He's just like a standstill scorer. And I don't think that's what the Warriors are all about. They weren't all about that in game 2.
James, if I can chime in for a second, the one thing I would say, like the question is, if Golden State, just looking quickly, they were not the same down the stretch. They still have the second least points allowed per game in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Point being, in the playoffs, there's no lull. You're playing D again. I think if they recommit to that and the depth of their rotation, not just their main stars, if they get back to playing that aggressive D again, I think it gives them a puncher's chance, because all of us, and myself included, you don't think of Golden State. All you think of is Steph, right? Steph, Klay Thompson. They were actually playing a phenomenal defense.
Yeah.
If they can get back to that, you have to give them a puncher's chance. That's right. That's where I'd go with that.
And I think that's what happens with like a lot of teams in the NBA. Like when they see the success of the Warriors, they all just want to shoot, but they forget that other part where they actually play defense too. You know what I'm saying? You can't have one without the other. Yeah.
Exactly.
Partner, you got any thoughts on this matchup?
My eyes were, but as much as my eyes want to pop from Greg's little note about Jokic's historic season, they popped even more at Shad's note about 11 games the stars have played together.
11 minutes.
11 minutes. Oh, not even 11 games. That's like one game.
Right.
That's like that's I'd say they're looking like Brooklyn Nets West from last year, but I don't even think Brooklyn was that bad as far as cohesiveness is concerned. Yeah, I mean, I know I was pretty high on Golden State throughout the season. Steph was playing lights out for a long time, and I just figured that they'd figure out eventually Clay would get back into a rhythm. And heck, he just thought he dropped 40 points the other night. Certainly, that would certainly imply that he is. But yeah, I'm not gonna go outside the consensus on this one. As big of a monster as Jokic is, obviously, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter are looking like that Markelle Fultz label on him. Like, will we ever play them again?
Yeah.
Which to that, we were thinking about that about Klay Thompson for not too long ago. But that being said, at least Klay Thompson had a little bit of a track record before he got hurt.
Right.
These two, I don't know. It's. I think it's been. It hasn't been like close to both the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, Porter came into. Porter had a massive injury coming into the league, so they knew that they took the chance. And Murray's was a toward an ACL. It happens. You hope they're still young enough that you do see the best of them. But yeah, that's definitely a question. Well, one other thing too, Chase and I spoke about this. The kid for Denver, who I'm really interested to see, like now the playoffs here, Bones Highland. If you've been paying attention to them, he's been playing some really, really good basketball.
He's been balling.
And I almost get the feeling like he's at the point now where, the rest of America, if they can drag this series out, may learn who he is. Yeah. Like he's turned into a really good player right now. So on Denver's side, if he becomes, I don't even need him to be the second option. Just he's provided a spark. He's frenetic defensively. I'm curious. He's an interesting element in this series to me. For me, if his level of play is high enough, he may give Denver a shot at this. Still going Golden State, but curious to see that.
Golden State. No, go ahead, partner. My fault.
No, you got one more point. I was ready to switch gears a little bit.
No, I was just saying that we all picked Golden State to win this series. So
yeah. Denver's just got too many holes, literally and figuratively. But because you need a guy to get healthy. You can't have a better name than Bones, right? Well, as Greg just said, Michael Porter did come into this league as a bit of a risk right off the bat. Another player that came into the league as a risk right off the bat, and certainly has proved many of those doubters wrong, is Joel Embiid. And that's my matchup I want to focus on. Team I was very down on at the end of last year, the Toronto Raptors. They had a surge in the second half of the season. Wound up getting a top 6 team, top 6 seed. They're the 5 going up against Philadelphia, who fell off a little bit. They were holding on to the 1 for a little bit. They fell off. They're kind of in the mix still a little bit, and they dropped back down to 4. And this is kind of like a nice tantalizing kind of bang 'em up type of series. And you got a lot of flash with Siakam on one side, got a lot of flash, of course, with the beard. Now he's used to his new digs in Philly. And there's a lot to like about Toronto as far as, Van Vliet, of course, is a super stellar shooter. Scotty Barnes had a killer rookie year. Gary Trent had a good year. OG Anunoby scored a lot of points this year. So they got a lot of different offense coming from different places on Toronto. And Philadelphia is, of course, a monster that made this giant trade, finally got rid of Simmons, and now they got this 1-2 punch that really, at least on paper and a little bit what we've seen on the court, really works well together. So I'm excited to watch this matchup. Shad, why don't you take it first? What's your thoughts on Sixers Raptors?
Oh, this was to me was a toss up. But I think I'm gonna go with Toronto. I think the main thing that's gonna make me pick Toronto is coaching. I've never trusted Doc Rivers.
You're a Clippers fan,
he always seems to underachieve, and this seems to be an underachieving moment for him. Just the way they I guess they peaked too early, with the number 1 seed. They just kind of split out from there. James Harden hasn't been playing well, one of their starters, one of their best players, Thibault, he can't even play in Canada. So I think that hurts, defensively, since he's like an all NBA type defender, who can kind of take away one of Toronto's best scorers. And I just think Nick Nurse, he's proven himself to be probably like a top 5 coach in the league, and Doc Rivers is very overrated. And I think Nick Nurse just has the, kind of the moxie and the pedigree to show, that, he can get the best out of his teams. You don't even think they would be that good. I know me coming in this year, I thought Toronto was okay. I thought they would maybe, be like the playing game. I just didn't think they had like the star like they had in the past with Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry. But they kind of just gelled together. They have great coaching, and I think, they'll prevail. It's going to be a long series, but I think they'll probably prevail in 7 games.
Siakam sure looks like a star. Greggers, what you got?
I'm with Chad on this one. Something he touched on, which is a huge factor to me. Thibault being out. He's one of their best defenders, if not their best. He averages 25.5 minutes a game. That's now gone in those road games. With the depth of scoring options Toronto has right off the bat, I don't know how they're going to overcome that. Add that on top of that. I'm not going to kill Doc Rivers as much, but Nurse is a really good coach. And the Sixers they haven't looked good down the stretch here. They just have not. You get the feeling they may have peaked too early. They've had a lot of turmoil. Toronto just seems to be the team on the rise for this season and going forward again. I'm with you. I think Toronto wins in 6. I think they ended in Toronto.
Wow. I mean, 4-5 is not much of an upset, but so far 2 out of 4 upsets.
But again, with the title thing, really, it's a big deal. It really is a big deal. I mean, you look at their starting 5 now with Harden. Harden's nothing close considered to a lockdown defender. So already now you're exposing another spot. That's at least 2 of the 5. I'd like Toronto. I think defense is going to be a big issue for Philly.
I agree.
And Scotty Barnes is one of the he just keeps getting better and better, it seems like, by the day. So I feel like there's going to be matchup problems for Philly in the entire series.
James the Jet, final thoughts on this topic.
I'm looking at this the Raptors roster right now, and I could see the matchup problems. Like,
They're deep.
yeah, I don't know who's gonna guard Pascal. Scotty's also a big body. And the other thing about this Raptors team, they're really good on defense. But on the other end of it, that is Joel Embiid, and they don't really have a big to stand up against him. So he might torch them every game this series, unless they're like doubling him. But
No faith in Chris Boucher?
no. Oh, the other thing, like, since the addition of James Harden to the Sixers, there's been an odd man out in Tobias Harris. He was like a big part of what they did, and now it's like he's kind of like lost in the sauce because James Harden is like ball dominant. So I think they gotta, in order for them to be competitive and win this series, they gotta really involve him more. Well, they really don't have a choice because Thibault's not there, and he's not really a contributor that much on offense, but they really have to add Tobias to their formula in order to beat this Raptors team. But I think they can do it. I still think Joel's the great equalizer because I think he's going to torch them if he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, I feel like my I don't know whether it's my brain or my heart, but something wants to take Philly, but Toronto's just, they've been proving people wrong, including myself, all year long. So
yeah,
I'm not as confident. I'm not as confident with my Philly support as I probably should be or would have been a couple months ago.
I think by game 2 we'll know where this series is going.
Yeah.
Toronto for me, I was thinking of this. I'm using a baseball analogy. They're what the Tampa Bay Rays are in baseball. They get rid of talent. They move people. Their system works. Their player development works. They draft correctly. Scotty Barnes, myself included. I didn't think he'd go. I thought Suggs would go higher than him. He's turned out to be phenomenal. They seem to have the right pieces in place from top to bottom in that organization. They really do.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna do Sixers in 6.
Oh,
Because I think the Joel thing is just too much to overcome for them because they don't have any. I don't see anybody that could stop him unless they double team him the whole game. Partner, we didn't hear your pick.
I think I mean I guess I'll I guess I'll split the panel and go Sixers since I've been on them, but yeah, I don't know. I just have zero confidence in saying that whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm just going like that so I don't look like a complete turncoat on past things I've said, but I also don't want to look like an idiot and infiltrate in front of me,
Right. I don't know. I like playing devil's advocate sometimes. But most
Fear
times.
the North. That's all I say. Fear the
Fear
North.
the
North. So I want to talk playing, and I want to fly to the East Coast. Speak about a matchup that I'm really interested in. The Nets and Cavs. I think this is going to be a really good series. I personally, I'm following this Nets team until either they, whether they get eliminated or they go all the way, whatever the case may be. Because I like the way that KD's been talking as of late. He doesn't care who they stand in front of. He's like, let's lace them up and let's go. And I think with a player of his caliber talking like that and his track record, I think whoever he's standing in front of, they're going to be in trouble. And his past couple of games, you could kind of see like his game he's kind of changed his game to like his personnel. You see he's doing a lot more facilitating. He's not like mainly looking to score as much. He's had like 2 triple doubles in like the last 3 or 4 games. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that type of KD. And then if it gets down to crunch time, the Slim Reaper is going to show himself. I got Brooklyn winning this game. and I think they're gonna be, they're gonna solidify their spot in the playoffs. Since we went,
I'll take them by 30.
but the Cavs were so good in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, well, we ain't the beginning of the year now.
They kind of struck out here though, kind of running into the Nets for their playoff hopes, but we'll see what happens. I got the Nets though. Shad, let's go to you. What do you think about this playing game? Who you got?
I got the Nets too. I just think they have too much talent, and the injuries with the Cavaliers is just going to be too much. Jared Allen, who I think was probably the best player, him not being there is going to, I believe, hurt the Cavs in this game. And I don't even think the Cavs make it into the playoffs with the 8th seed either. I think they get beat, for the other playing game down the road. So I think their season is coming to an end. I think that fairy tale is over. I think, JB Bickerstaff did a great job, coach of the year candidate, but they just have to overcome too much. And I think they're just a year away from being a, contender in the East.
Well,
Right.
this is weird for me. I'm on the same exact board with Chad again tonight. All year I've said all year, and I stick to it. Early in the year, Bickerstaff, the job he's done, that team's been incredible. Most surprising, most improved team in my opinion. It's just the injuries finally got to them. Like Chad said, with Allen out, that rim protection, even with Mobley, is not the same. They've had an amazing year, but they've limped to the finish line. They're 3-7 their last 10. As you said, Durant has it in his mind. This is title or bust for him. I just think this is it's probably the worst possible spot for the Cavs, getting the Nets as the play-in. So it's all Nets. I don't think this is close. I think the Nets come out and dominate from the start in this game. I think it's Nets convincing victory.
And not to throw fuel on the fire, but you brought it up off air before we started that Jared Allen's not even going to play.
Yeah, and that's the whole key to their team is their defense. And I mean, he's a huge difference maker. He is. Forget the Sports Center clips and this and that. When you watch over 48 minutes, what a difference he makes. The rim protection, detracting teams from taking it to the hole because they know he's there. Without that, I just think they're too compromised at this point against a loaded, probably the best 7 seed in the history of basketball. So
Right.
just a bad spot for the Cavs.
And if you put Jared Allen into that Cavs lineup, they're able to play big like how they've been doing all season, and that could probably really affect the Nets because they don't.
Yes, you're right. The Nets' weakness over the last couple of years has been their interior since Allen's been gone. It was a problem when they had Allen. So
right. Yeah,
I agree, but that potential weakness it's not exploited now.
Yeah, unfortunately. Partner, any thoughts on this matchup?
Oh, not really. It's gonna be a 30-point game. This game's gonna be over before it starts, and it sucks because I really like what Cleveland did. Mobley's was proved to be a great draft pick for them, but it just, I don't know. Maybe it would be within 15 if Sexton wasn't hurt all year. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
They're just up against it.
Yeah.
And listen, the one thing they've played hard all year for Bickerstaff, but there's only so far you can bring that. The talent level of the Nets, I just think is going to overwhelm them at this stage in their development.
Yes, it's going to be a harsh learning curve.
Oh yeah, they're gonna learn something. They're gonna learn something that day.
Yep. And even it's a smaller, just one last factor too, because the Nets look like they could be anywhere from 7 to 10 in the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. If the game was in Cleveland, maybe, the home court, they don't even have that now. There's an excitement, Kyrie back on the court at home. There's a lot working against the Cavs.
Yeah.
So wait, if oh no, never mind. I was just thinking if somehow the Nets run into the Raptors, that means Kyrie can't play, right? In the Raptors home games, right?
That's
but
correct.
they would have to.
They
They would
could,
have to
but
like.
they would have to be
Yeah.
in the conference final.
Yeah, and that's not happening. I don't think.
Well,
Well.
It could happen
Raptors
second
prove
round.
everybody wrong.
It could happen second round. If Nets get
Could.
to 8.
Yeah, if Nets get the 8, yeah, that could
Oh,
happen.
they get the 8. Yeah. Well, hey, Chad, you go lead the parade party for Cleveland then. Be my guest.
Yeah.
got about as much chance of that as the Lakers making the playoffs.
Hey, they still could win the championship, right?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Let's move on. There was one more play-in game in the East, and as far as I'm concerned on this one, just bet the over. I know Charlotte was really struggled down the stretch. Atlanta really came on hot, but the bottom line is they both could score. It's one game. I know Atlanta's the favorite. I know Atlanta's probably going to win, but I think it happened, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, LaMelo Ball's a highlight reel in of himself. So, Greg, what you thinking?
I'm all Atlanta here. I think Atlanta, even for most of the year when the record was under 500, you knew they were better than that. They seem to have come into form more. Charlotte's they just don't play defense, and not that Atlanta's at the top of the league either. But I think in Atlanta, the Hawks, they won 7 of the last 10 down the stretch. The Hawks have the feel the better team to me, and I think they advance. I don't want to say it's a blowout, but I'd say it's probably a convincing win over Charlotte, in my opinion.
I'm going with Charlotte.
They finally split.
It was a matter of time.
It's hard.
I think Charlotte, has depth. I think, with Atlanta, they're pretty much too reliant on Trae Young. If he, somehow have an off night, the rest of that team can't get going at all. I think with Charlotte, you have, LaMelo Ball, you have Terry Rozier, you have Bridges. Too bad like Hayward's out, but you still got like, Harrell and Washington. It just seems like they're a team that can go like, 9 or 10 deep. And I think, in these, games, it matters, especially like if one player is off, you have, 3-4 other options that could score. Like you said, they don't play much defense, but they could score with anybody. I think they could outscore Atlanta. Atlanta feels like they have one person that can really score, over 25 points. And I feel like the Hornets could have, like 6 or 7 players score 20. And I think that's where the difference is. I think Charlotte has the depth, and I think they're hungry. I feel like, this is a team that, has LaMelo Ball, has like, kind of these young, hungry, scrappy players that, just want to show that, they could, at least make the playoffs and, be that Cinderella team, even though they won't go far, but I think they will, win this playing game.
Charlotte certainly is due. I mean, they've been knocking on the door just to make the playoffs for a number of years now, and they never seem to do it. So the fact they've been in the playoff 2 years in a row. Last year certainly wasn't much to write home about. So I mean, regardless of what their actual chances are to win, they are certainly due.
Quickly, just what Chad said too. He's actually right though. You don't think of Gordon Hayward anymore as I'm just looking at the stats here. Gordon Hayward still, when he was on the court, averages 32 minutes a game and 16 points a game. That's not easily. You don't just take that out of the equation, and it's a seamless transition. So in reality, I think Hayward actually is a big loss, him not playing in this game. I do.
Yeah. And it being a foot injury, this could be something that even if they do advance, it's gonna linger around. So they might not have him whole playoffs.
He does it. Although you don't want to, I don't want to call him a superstar. He's not, but he does so many things. He stretches the floor. He provides he's a difficult matchup for any team because he can shoot the ball so well. So I just think it's a big loss, and that's not going to help the Hornets.
How about this point guard matchup between Trey and LaMelo? Is Atlanta gonna have to hide Trey, because who is he gonna guard in this series? Can he guard LaMelo? Can he guard LaMelo at all?
I don't think anyone can guard LaMelo. I don't know if anyone can guard Trey either, but
On the opposite end, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, Trey's gonna do his thing, but it's like,
yeah,
if I'm the Hornets, I'm hunting him. Wherever he's at, that's where we're going.
yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody can guard LaMelo because he's such a freak matchup. He's a big point guard. He shoots. He gets to the basket. He's a
I was
little
gonna say,
wild.
I wouldn't be shocked if Trey is not on LaMelo, actually.
Yeah.
Because if I'm Atlanta, I don't care point guard. From my money's worth, the only way Charlotte wins that game is if LaMelo just goes off.
Yeah, he has to go
So
off.
I'm going to put a better defender on, whatever. So someone else can expose Trey Young, so be it. If it's me, I'm not going 48 minutes Trey Young on LaMelo. I'd mix that up.
Yeah.
So,
And what happens? What happens?
I'll
if,
let whoever try and score 30 against me. I'm not letting him do it.
and what happens if, gosh forbid, LaMelo is aggressive right off the bat and gets trained to foul trouble? Then Atlanta's really screwed.
Yeah, then they're screwed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't. Atlanta's going to win the. If I would think, I can't imagine they're looking at this like we're going to match that up now. I don't see that happening. You'll see a lot of help defense on LaMelo. Yeah, I can't imagine. Put it that way.
But then I feel like them playing like a lot of help defense on LaMelo is kind of playing into Charlotte's hands, because that's what they want, right?
They want a lot of shooters.
Yeah, they want the defense to rotate so they could, and LaMelo's going to pick them apart. So I don't know. I think this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I mean, I would think my gut would think it's going to be close, and I think just Atlanta with all the experience they got here probably pulls it out late. But I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blowout in it by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're both going to score. I think they're both going to score, and they're going to score a lot.
Yeah.
Speaking of teams that are due, there's a couple matchups out west, and one matchup features a team that was like similar to Charlotte, very due for the playoffs for many, many years, scratched at the door, most of the time being pretty awful, and they're finally in and looking like a pretty decent team against a team that we got very used to, as Shad will attest. Ed was pretty happy about it. Got used to seeing do very well in the playoffs. So we got one matchup that is very good and one matchup that's kind of more of an afterthought. So Greg, let's take Clippers Timberwolves first. Are you going to be all on the cat train and then have Shad argue with you how his beloved Clippers are primed for a run?
No, you know what? I've been very impressed with Minnesota this year. They've taken a substantial jump. But on the flip side, we had spoken about one of the earlier podcasts here about the Clippers were 500 without George and Kawhi Leonard for most of the year. Now that they have George back, like I might sound crazy. I fully trust on Reggie Jackson in the playoffs here. I do. Or we called him, Mr. June last year or whatever we gave the nickname instead of. I think with Paul George back in the fold, I mean they've won the last 5. It's not a cut on Minnesota. I just think, especially on the defensive end, I'm taking the Clippers. I just, like I said, George coming back just adds another element. He's got fresh legs. I'm going Clippers.
That's very happy.
I mean, you could skip over me. I'm thinking.
Timberwolves, right?
But let the record show, I predicted the Timberwolves will make the playoffs, so I do think they'll get the 8th seed. But they're not going to beat the Clippers. I think the Clippers, they're peaking right now, and they got the second best player back, and they're just on fire. I just feel like this is, if they were fully healthy, I think they would win the championship, but they're not. So I mean, they're gonna be a contender, but they're gonna beat Minnesota. I think pretty handily. I think it's gonna be it's gonna be a high scoring game, but I think the Clippers probably win by about 10 points. I just don't think Minnesota has that experience yet, but I see them making the playoffs at the AC.
Yeah. I can see it.
Chad, same thing. Just quickly, I'm with you as well on that. I think both these teams will get into the main playoff bracket, but I think the Clippers will emerge as the 7th seed.
So, quite the hot take given the other matchup.
Not going out on a limb here.
I really like what the Clippers did at the trade deadline. They got Norman Powell and Rocco from Portland, and then you add back Paul George and eventually Kawhi Leonard. I think this team is very deep. They can play defense like across the board, 1 through 5. So I agree with both you guys that the Clippers are going to come out victorious in this game, and whoever they run into after that better be on watch, because I think this Clippers team is a real deal.
Didn't we have a joke not that far back about Roku, Greg's TV being Vinny the Microwave Johnson off the bench, killer 6-man?
I have the Roku. That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the Clippers too. With George, especially with George back, and I would love to see Minnesota win, especially them playing at home. The team's been through hell. Cat had a nightmare of a year, or really a couple of years, I guess, going through dealing with the virus, how that affected his family and whatnot. So, I mean, I certainly love to see Minnesota pull it off, but yeah, I mean, experience got to win out here. Clippers know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, there is one other matchup. I don't think it's going to be too much to scream home about or watch, for that matter, but we still should probably talk about it.
Wow.
Is there any expectation coming out of this game? Spurs, Pelicans.
I think there is.
They don't want it. They don't want to talk about it.
I mean, I think the Pelicans, win this one, kind of going away. I think they just have 4 potential all-stars in that team. So I think the Spurs really only have one kind of guy who could, kind of get buckets. I think with the addition of CJ McCollum, he's kind of shown as merging, he's almost like a number 1 option, scoring option anyways. I think him bringing, 25 or so points per game, along with Ingram, you got Valanciunas, and Lord knows maybe Zion shows up to play one game. But this team, they have talent. I think the Spurs, they just rely too much on the system, and I think Greg Popovich, I think this is his last game as a coach.
You're still sticking to that.
I'm still sticking to that.
Okay.
I think he parts ways some way. There's going to be some type of parting ways, but he will not be the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs next year. You can't go, 3 years in a row without making the playoffs. I don't care who you are. You got to go.
Well, for me, this is, I think it's an entertaining game. I mean, do any of us think there's prospects of either of these teams doing anything forward? Absolutely not. But for a 1-game playoff, I mean, I'll tune in. I think it'd be enjoyable. I think your matchup of McCollum and Dejounte Murray is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
But I think New Orleans with McCollum has been substantially better. I mean, again, you don't think of New Orleans, the Pelicans, as this huge home court advantage, but it doesn't hurt. So 2 middling teams, under 500 teams, give me the home court advantage, and I'll take New Orleans. The train will end immediately thereafter. Succinctly. They won't linger around for another second. But someone has to win this game, and I think it will be New Orleans. Quick note too. I was reading some of the San Antonio press clippings. They are as surprised as anyone to be in the playoffs. They were not gearing up to make a playoff run. They still wanted, to develop their young kids. So I think the demise of the Lakers is really, it surprised them as much as anyone. Not that they're just happy to be here, but they weren't interfering with what they hope is they weren't going to make a deal for this year. It's just the teams above them collapsed and they're here. With that being said, I'm going to go New Orleans.
Partner, do you agree, or are you going to be contrarian?
No, I think the Spurs are getting packed up. They're out of here. Yeah, I think that Pelicans team is not miles better, but they're definitely better than that Spurs team. The talent is gonna show.
You're probably right, but you know what? I'll go contrarian because neither one of them still very good. And if I got to put my money on DeJounte Murray or CJ McCollum, you know what? I'm going to go with DeJounte Murray. Kid almost averaged a triple double this year. May have been for a terrible team, but still a triple double. Almost triple double, I should say. So I'll be the oddball. So you know what? Some dogs got to win.
True.
These are really dogs. One's 10 games under 500, the other's 12. So they're both going to go back to the doghouse pretty soon. I can tell you that.
What you say? The train will not avoid derailing a second more.
Yeah, don't book a hotel for a second night. That will not be necessary.
Pack one outfit, please.
Yep, that's all you need. All you need.
Well, speaking of trains derailing, and speaking of playing tournament teams and teams that were not able to make it or supposedly got a shot that other teams were unable to get, Shad, the floor is yours. Please tell us how the Los Angeles Lakers still have a chance to win the NBA championship.
Next year, yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. I don't know. Anthony Davis, I think it's his fault, to tell you the truth. All his injuries, looks like he hasn't, kind of became like that, superstar top 5 player that everybody, figured that he would be, taking over from LeBron, passing the torch like, Kareem did the Magic. And you have LeBron James damn near being 40 years old, who has to go out and score, 40, 50 points for them to, win a game for the second half of the season. It just, I just did not work out. And I think it starts with Anthony Davis. If I had to pick, him, pick that being the number one, probably definitely be that. I think also Frank Vogel, I'm glad that, he's not returning. I think, for this point of this career, I don't think LeBron could be the GM. I think you have to, have a strong GM coach who comes in there and just says, no, you're not running the show. Gotta, let us, run the show. So I think it will be fixed, next year. I think they will, maybe get somebody like Greg Popovich or somebody. I have no idea. But I think they're going to stop, listening to LeBron. If LeBron wants to leave, then they're just going to let him go. Lakers are going to turn it around. They're just one of those, I think they missed the playoffs more in the past, 5 years, 5, 6 years, and they almost did in the franchise history.
Yeah.
They matched it. So this is a proud franchise who knows how to win. I think they're going to turn it around. I think they're going to make major changes, and I think it's going to it's definitely going to start with head coach. I think Vogel, he's already gone. I think they trade, at least 2 of the big 3 that they have right now. That's LeBron, Anthony Davis, and definitely Westbrook. So I think they next year they're back in the championship picture.
I could most certainly see LeBron forcing his way out of town. I'd be surprised if he is the one out, but I could definitely see him doing it because, you're taking my talents to South Beach, and we all remember how that played out. Greg, what you got on the Lakers? How bad is this failure in the grand scheme of the history of the NBA?
It's colossal, to be honest. It's a colossal failure. I mean, listen, when you have the star power that they have 4 definitive Hall of Famers on that team. I mean, without even a question. With that being said, of course, the injuries, to me, I've been on this train all year. The roster construction stunk. Vogel gets blamed. Westbrook gets blamed. you have too many square holes to fit in a round peg. You have one of the oldest rosters in the league. It is the fourth quarter numbers for that team are staggering at how many leads they blew, how many points their point differential was in the second half. And that goes to getting an older team. Even a guy like Carmelo, there's no one person that's wrong for this team. Can Carmelo still score his 12 and be a useful piece on a roster? Sure. He can't be twice. He can't be, though, that guy on a team that's one of the oldest in the NBA, where he gives you nothing else. So again, you had a roster of guys who were too old, too injury prone, too many of the same talent. We all wondered before that. Westbrook and LeBron. Westbrook's not a terrible player. Did he have a good year? No, he didn't. But really, if you look at this from a broader perspective, was that ever going to be a great fit? The two ball dominant players on the same team? I think so much blame, even Vogel. Sure, a new voice is needed, no doubt about it. And that happens with good coaches, bad coaches. But the front office has to take a huge hit for that. And I'll agree with Shad. One thing I can't stand about LeBron is, he talks out of both ways, if you know what I mean, sometimes. I'll keep it PG. But don't tell me he literally said today, I have no piece of the roster construction. That's total BS. That is total BS. I agree with Shad. You know what? You need someone in the front office, whether it be the coach, the GM, that needs a stronger voice. And LeBron, you're not the GM. Yes, does LeBron know basketball? Yes. But he's going to play favorites to people he knows, to friends, when in reality, those are not the pieces they needed. They need younger legs. They need more guys who can play D. They need better complementary skills. So to back up again, it was a colossal failure. And I'm going to point this firmly at the front office. It's on them, because I've heard everyone else get blamed other than them this year, and I think it's a disaster of a roster. So that for me, yes, it's an epic disaster, and I kind of love it, to be honest. But that's besides the point.
I mean, you could argue LeBron has more effect on a roster than anyone in sports as a whole this side of Tom Brady.
Of course, he had personal, and I'm not saying that, you don't check in with LeBron. Like, my point is, when you have a great player on a team, the front office may ask, hey, what do you think about this guy? Are there any red flags? I'm good with that. But there has to be a decision maker that's not LeBron either, because he's not looking at it from the same perspective. LeBron is worried about he wants a title in the next year or two because he's near the end. The Lakers' long-term focus can't be just LeBron, right? It can't be. Hence this too old roster that couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter. So that, to me, it falls solely on them.
Partner, what you got to add before we wrap up?
I feel everything you guys are saying, the roster construction, I feel like them going out to get Russell Westbrook was just like a name grab more than something that would actually fit their team. Like has been beaten down over and over again, that Rusty and LeBron, they can't play together. Rusty statistically had a pretty decent season, 18, 8, and 8, shooting 40 plus for the season. It's not terrible, but he's also making $50 million this year, and he's probably going to make more than that next year. So I don't even know how they're going to move him with his. I don't even know if his stock has been tarnished since being on the Lakers, because he's been blamed constantly for everything that's wrong with the Lakers. And then on the other end of that, you got AD, aka Mr. Glass. I don't know if you can even move him either, because what team would want to have a injury-prone, quote-unquote, superstar that you're only going to get 25, 30 games a season? So
Nick.
it's like, no, don't put that even.
Hey, you leave us alone. You leave us alone.
Leave us alone.
Shad, our fights have been civil. Don't take this to the street with me here. And that's a low blow.
That's a little stab, little twist.
You might be right, but it's still a low blow.
But it's like I don't know, like the Lakers. I want to see what they do, because I don't know, in that situation. I don't know what you do. You can't run that back, because you're not just gonna put a coach there and he's gonna fix it, no matter who it is. But they need to get better personnel for who they have. If they're going to rob with LeBron and AD, you need to get Rusty out of there and get players that work with those two guys. Shooters and defenders. That's what you need.
Actually, real quick before we toss the break, Chad, what do you think of your all-time favorite coach, Doc Rivers? Potentially that he replaces Frank Vogel.
I mean, good if you want the kind of the same results. He's gonna
Garbage.
he's gonna underachieve. He's not gonna like miss the playoffs, but he's gonna maybe make it like the Western Conference Finals, and then he's gonna somehow blunder it up somehow, underachieve, with some late game management, and you're gonna lose in game 6, game 7 when you should have won. You clearly got the superior talent. So I watch. He's gonna do it this year with the 76ers. You watch, but I mean,
yeah,
he's still one that coach that's still flashing that ring from that one championship that he has, and he's like made for life. And I think didn't he even make like the top 25 coaches of all time?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, somehow.
Exactly. So I don't know. He's riding a legacy of one team for like 2 years, and I don't know. Everybody thinks he's gonna relive this magic.
One real question to you guys, and this is Chad and all you guys, but I really do mean this. Whether it's Rivers, Vogel, whoever, now that you've had the 82 game package, you have to agree to some degree, no matter who was coaching that team. Could you have somewhat of a better result? Sure.
No.
They were bad.
Didn't
they
work.
were a bad team. I remember we talked about Vogel one day, and I felt bad for him. He looked exasperated. He's like, we're trying. We're putting different lineups. We're putting, we're bringing guys in from Pakistan. They were doing everything they could. The point is, granted, I agree sometimes a team needs their voice, but if they don't change that personnel, I don't care who the heck they bring in there. I don't think there's any different result. I don't.
No, I agree.
I really don't. I mean, maybe this was the bottom of the potential outcomes, but I don't see it that much better, period, without a revamp to some degree of that roster.
And there's a lot of dudes on this current Lakers roster that stole money from them this season because they didn't even suit up.
No.
So Kendrick Nunn being one of them.
Kendrick Nunn.
He didn't play a game.
I haven't seen him because I didn't. Well, on street
He didn't play a game. Granted, that there are fluke things that happen too. Like he got hurt, so that call it bad circumstances. But even if he had played, would he have improved them a little bit? Sure, he would have.
Yeah.
But they're still, are they above the 8 or the 9 seed? I don't think so. No, they probably would have gotten into this tournament. Yes, I would think he would have improved them to that degree. But even still, that's somewhat.
The bar is pretty low for that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. 10 and 12 games under 500. So, and they couldn't even get in under those parameters. That's what I mean. When you really look at this, this was an epic debacle. I mean,
No, it was.
Like even I thought when we talked earlier, there's no way there. I didn't think there's any way the Lakers, and don't forget they had to be up 6 games at one point, even a month ago on that 10th seed. Like there's no way they were going to fall out of it, and it just kept
getting worse and worse and worse. Dang, I had something I wanted to say.
So would you Knicks fans take any of the Lakers' big 3 in a trade?
Not one of them. Not
I'm
one
good.
of them.
not being objective. Not one only because in our development curve, if you want to call it that, which may take another, 2 millenniums, but they don't fit as far as, what if Westbrook came over because they need a point guard. He's not the long-term answer. So by the time they're ready to compete for a title, he's now past his prime. They just don't fit. That's what it is. Anthony Davis would be the one, and I totally agree with the injury and all that. He'd be the one that you'd say, okay, because they've had a problem with big men as well and rim protection. They may lose Mitchell Robinson. For that reason, the piece itself, if healthy, makes more sense to me. But again, we're not one of those players away from a title. So no, not for us. They could put someone else over the top, not us.
And the other thing with Davis, of course, he's the youngest of the three, but
That's
again,
it. Yes.
Again, if
But-
he ain't gonna play, what good does that do?
But you can't, to Shad's point earlier, you can't, the Knicks are not a point they can give up significant assets, whatever they have for him. Then they've brought themselves back to, square one, and Davis is who you're relying on. No, you can't do that. There's no way. Can't base your franchise around a guy that injury prone. No way.
So in Rusty's case, phenomenal talent, right? But he's been on 3 different teams in the past 3 years, and it could potentially be 4 different teams in 4 years.
Feels like 6.
What does this say about him? Like, is he someone you can have on a championship caliber team, or can he only do these amazing feats on teams that are not really going to do anything?
I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap. I mean, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say he's got the it factor, and it's just not. He's just in a bad situation, but I don't think it's totally on him. I mean, some of these situations he's been in were just really bad, and I mean, we saw him with Washington last year. That team shouldn't have been anywhere near the playoffs.
No,
I agree. He was the only reason they got in, but by a lot. So
Yeah.
there was no chance that team was winning a title. I think he's got to be in the right place. I mean, I think he cannot be the 1A on a team. The nature in which he plays, and now he's got some tread on the tires too. I think on the right role, sure, but you have to have that right role established. You can't just hand him the reins and think you're going to win a title. That's not going to happen.
yeah, that's tough. I always feel bad for Rusty because I love the way that he approaches the game, plays the game, but it's just like he's a point guard that can't shoot. So,
But he does a lot of other things. If they get him in the right role, but
Yeah.
I don't know how they move him now either, because the contract, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's something like $50 million next year, isn't it?
yeah, 50 or 55 million next year. He's old.
So just the parameters of the cap, the closest they said was a John Wall trade, just to, bad big numbers for bad big numbers. But I don't know how they make it work. It's going to have to be some creative financing to figure out how to make a trade work within the cap.
Yeah, Lakers are gonna have to eat at least a third of it, at least.
They're good for it. It's crypto arena. It's a lot of money over there.
Yeah.
True.
All
That's true.
right, we got to take some time to pay some bills, but when we come back, we'll be talking college championship. Keep it locked, Hoops Boys Pod.
We are back. We are back. We are back. We are back. Back into the Hoops Boys podcast. Gentlemen, we crowned a champion out of March Madness. And the game was a little funky. It was all Tar Heels one way, and then next thing you know, Rock Chalk Jayhawk and Bill Selfs walk off with his second championship. So, Greggers, this is your baby as always. Was it more a Carolina collapse or a Kansas comeback?
It's hard to say Carolina collapse. I mean, Kansas. I mean, you have to give some credit to Kansas on a whole. They got an easier run through the tournament, but hey, that's part. You play the old saying: you play who's in front of you, right? They put an amazing run, obviously early second half. They got Carolina out of sorts, and where the game really began to change was Carolina. Their one glaring weakness is depth. Within minutes, not only did Kansas cut that lead to single digits from 15 at halftime, Leaky Black picks up 2 fouls in a minute. He's now has 4 fouls. Their best defender, which again, Kansas is lethal, especially in transition. When he got his 4th foul, Baycott was obviously hurting. I think it's one of those deals. Carolina didn't play a smart first 5 minutes of that second half. They let Kansas speed them up when they shouldn't have. But you have to give credit to Kansas. I mean, they put a blitzkrieg-like performance on that first 8 minutes. And even if Carolina, once Kansas took the lead, wilted and lost by 20, Carolina was down 6 with 3 minutes left and tied it up again. So I think Carolina, if they had to do that game over, and Hubert Davis, who did a great coaching job throughout the tournament, and I could point out a million examples without going into it now, I don't think that was his best game. They needed to call a timeout early in that second half, and he didn't. But with that being said, Carolina had an awesome tournament. Again, it was a tie game, a chance to tie again after the collapse. Give credit to Kansas, their depth, and Remy Martin was huge. You know, he rejoined the fray as a pivotal player in the Big 12 tournament, and there is no chance they're winning that title or the title game without Martin. He had the 3 threes in the second half, had a block. He was huge. So you got to give credit to Kansas. I think they won without that being their most talented team. So more credit to Kansas in my book.
Shaddillac, what you got? Agree?
I think North Carolina blew it. I think I put that loss on Hubert Davis. I don't think he coached a good game. I don't think he coached great during the tournament. I think he just had the best players for most of that tournament for pretty much all the games he went up against. I definitely don't like what he did down the stretch that second half. That timeout situation where Greg was talking about, and then like the final shots. It didn't look like he had any kind of plays called. They ran any plays to go with. It was kind of like just seemed like one-on-one type basketball. I feel like if you had like a Jay Wright in that situation or any of like all those elite coaches, that they would at least kind of drew up a play. Like what the hell were those final shots they were going for? Like with the last 10 seconds, it was like deep threes. Like I didn't really like see any picks or any kind of misdirection, anything like that. It was just like, all right, we're giving you the ball, you just do this. And I kind of think this is going to be the downfall of North Carolina. I mean, you could say if I'm wrong, but one has ever like a predecessor, or person who succeeds an all-time coach done well, especially when they're handpicked by the coach before. I feel like UConn kind of fell off, Wisconsin really hasn't been the same. I think there's probably more examples that I've been that I just can't think of right now. But I think you need a coach who's actually been a head coach somewhere else, who's kind of shown you that he can actually coach, and it's not just the players. More than just a great recruiter. And I don't know, what I saw from Hubert Davis didn't scream to me like he's X's and O's kind of coach. He's probably a recruiter, probably get you, your top 5 of the top 25 players in the country. But, for a team that have North Carolina that has like 0 depth, that means you're not developing players or something. And that falls on you as a coach. I mean, I know he was the head coach of North Carolina's JV team, but what else has he really done? Where else did you coach? Where else did you kind of show that you can coach and you can, hold up this program? Why didn't you start out like at a small school like St. Peter's or something like that and show that you can coach? You can, bring lower level talent up to a bigger stage. So I put this on Hubert Davis 100%. I don't care about the injuries or anything like that. He didn't coach a well game. I think if Roy Williams was coaching that game, North Carolina wins that game by double digits. I think it's on Hubert Davis.
I'll take. Oh, so if I'm reading between the lines, not to take too much of a sidebar, if I'm reading between the lines, then that means you think John Shire is going to completely crap his pants next year when he's the head man at Duke?
Yeah, I think like your first year or two, yes, because you still have the old coaches players. So like that first year or two, yeah, you'll do great. You'll make it to Final Four, maybe win a national championship type of thing. But after that, I think that's where the downfall happens. Like people see through, like, all right, this guy can't really coach this a great recruiter, or he's just kind of doing it with this other coach's players. That's where I'm kind of scared of my team, Syracuse. I think if they have a handpicked coach by Boeheim, they're really going to fall off the map. Boeheim has really uplifted his team past where the talent is. And I don't know if these other coaches being handpicked and kind of gifted like these great programs can actually do that. They haven't. I don't think they've really showed they can coach. I don't think they've grinded like these all-time greats have shown.
Greg, regardless of your differing opinions here, what do you think of Shad's assessment of Carolina having the talent advantage over Kansas?
Well, see, okay, their starting five is excellent, but let me add one thing with the starting five. They also have Leaky Black, who cannot shoot the ball. So he's a phenomenal defender. So they're even limited offensively. They don't even have five options on offense. So the take I have on this is, let's not forget, they were in early February, not even slated to make the tournament. They figured it out. He moved Davis to the point guard. They made Davis the de facto point guard, move Love to the two. So I think if I look at the season in totality, yeah, I can look back at the title game and say there are mistakes made. But if I look at this whole season a whole, again, the lack of depth that you got that team into the tournament as an 8 seed, inches away from being the second 8 seed in the history of the tournament to win the thing. Even the Duke game, I had no idea what they were going to do with Banchero. They put Manic on Banchero. The point is, Banchero got his points, but Manic did a good job, like on a whole, if you watched. He got a number of stops. It kept Leaky Black from getting in foul trouble because they needed him all over the perimeter. So, I mean, again, if I take that the second half away, Kansas is really good. They're much, much deeper than Carolina. I think they got as much as they could get. Yes, they could have finished that game. And like I said, I'd love to play that first 5 minutes over again. That's where the mistakes were made. But again, I mean, you're inches away from a title from a team that almost wasn't in the tournament. He adjusted it on the whole as the season went, and I think he did a great job. Again, that's no guarantee next year. And to Chad's point a little bit, it's Roy Williams players. So what happens from here, I can't guarantee. But I think within the season, you have to look at the bigger picture. To get them to the title game was pretty phenomenal. And don't lose sight of the fact they lost. They didn't have, other than St. Peter's, which was an easy one. They beat UCLA, they beat Duke, they waxed Marquette, and they beat Baylor. Like that. That's a gauntlet of a run through the tournament. No one else had that. Think about that. Like those are legit stud programs. So, but they came up short.
Back to Kansas. Of course, Bill Self won the title previously. This would be a second one, and Kansas. They came through just now, but a lot of past tournament runs they usually did come up short a lot of the time, and Bill Self probably got forgotten a little bit as a great college coach. So, Shad, why'd you take this one first? What kind of favors did Bill Self do for himself as far as his legacy is concerned?
Oh, he did great favors for himself. I believe now he's only about one of 15 coaches ever to have multiple national championships. So that puts him in elite, category. Before this, I thought he was a good coach, not a great coach. So I think it brings him in that upper echelon of coaches, easily top, 20 of all time. I just thought he was kind of maybe a top 10 coach of the decade or, generation. But I think this brings him to the all-time great category, doing it here at Kansas. And then he previously kind of did it at Illinois. So he's kind of done it with, and I feel like he's kind of done this without like real NBA top tier talent most times. So I think that kind of shows what kind of coach he is also. And, I was a big Kansas doubter. I always thought they were like that main team that's, underachieved with a pretty good talent. But, Bill Self finally got his second national championship, and he's now in that, like Hall of Fame, I want to say GOAT category, but that great coach category now.
Greg, what about you? Do the rings back up the body of work, or is it a little bit of rose-colored glasses?
No, I think it does, because something I was thinking about earlier, you know why Kansas has had some huge upsets in the tournament, or they've had some that we remember? Because they always make the tournament. And I'm serious when I say that. The tournaments are one-game affairs, right? We've seen every program on earth, including Duke, including you name it, lose early round games. When I looked it up prior, they won 14 straight Big 12 championships from 05 to 18. You know how hard that is to do? The Big 12 isn't, America East. And like, that's ridiculous. Seriously, think about that. 14 straight, 15 Big 12 titles. Yeah. So, I mean, they've had some questionable losses in the tournament, but I think it's easy to look at those because a lot of people don't focus on the body of work. It's the tournament, right? That's all they remember. I think this was kind of just was affirming his legacy as a coach. And I think it was fitting that even he said this was not his most talented team. I think he adjusted to his personnel as well as he ever done. I brought up the Remy Martin thing. Remy Martin came in as the preseason Big 12 Player of the Year. He was hurt and wasn't even in the starting lineup in the tournament. He realized if I bring Remy in as almost the sixth man, as a lead point guard later on, I just think he adjusted perfectly to this team. He played to its talents. And David McCormick, the big guy, who had been a lot of flack over his career, he's kind of been underwhelming. He kept instilling confidence in McCormick, and McCormick made the 2 shots down the stretch. I just think this was probably his best job, and it just took a lot of the naysaying about him away, because now he's in that elite category. I think there's only 6 coaches with more title wins than him. He has the 5th most tourney wins in the NCAA history. I mean, all these numbers added up, and now with the 2nd title, with a team he had to adjust to on the fly this year. This was not your traditional Kansas team. I think it affirms his legacy as one of the top coaches.
Partner, what you got next?
Well, I want to talk about some diaper dandies who have declared for this year's draft. And I want to see from, our group, who are you guys most excited about coming into the NBA? If you had to pick a player or two, who are you most excited about? Shad, let's start with you. Who are you most excited to see enter this year's draft and fulfill their dreams of becoming an NBA player?
I wouldn't say excited, but I really want to see how Chet Holmgren kind of does. I feel like he's the most unknown player in this draft. People think he could be, the next like Dirk Nowitzki, or he could be, kind of like a nobody, like a Frank Kaminsky. He's painfully thin. I think he's gonna have to gain at least 25 pounds. I don't think he's as athletic as most people say he is, but he's athletic enough to where he could probably play like maybe the 4th position. I'm torn on it. That's why I feel like he's interesting. I don't think. I mean, I think I'm gonna run to the TV like his first few games to see how he does.
Yeah.
I think it all depends. I think it all depends. Who he goes to. I don't think he should go to a team, that is kind of upstarting and young. I think he needs to kind of go to a middle of the road team that's a couple pieces away, where he could kind of develop and maybe sit for a few years and then possibly blossom. But if he goes to a team like Detroit Pistons, Orlando Magic, where he's gonna kind of be the man or second guy, look towards on that team from day one, I think he has plus potential if he goes to that. Another guy that I'm excited about is Jabari Smith. He really surprised me this year. I really didn't know anything about him prior to this year, but to me, he kind of established himself as definitely a top 3 pick in this draft. He's got the size, got the athleticism. I think he probably has the best upside of the people that are going to be drafted this year. Does he reach that? I'm not sure, but those are kind of my 2 that I would look out for.
Is Chet your number 1 overall?
Hell no.
No.
I mean, I wouldn't even pick him top 5 if I was a GM. It'd have to be say if the Lakers somehow get the 6th or 7th pick. Okay, I can see that. LeBron took him under the wing for a year or 2, and then he maybe develops into something bigger or better. Okay, but no, if I'm one of those teams at the bottom of the draft, bottom of the top of the draft, bottom of the standings. No, I just don't see him as a number one or number two type of option right away. Who's have to be that for those terrible teams?
Yeah.
It's funny you bring up the Lakers as a potential landing spot because I just pulled up the odds for the draft lottery and they owe their pick to New Orleans. So not only did New Orleans take their playoff spot, but they also took their draft pick.
Chase, a question, and is that lottery protected though? I'm not sure about that.
That I do not know. I
If
mean, if
it's not, that's danger.
I hope it's not. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I mean, if it is lottery protected, I would assume they would not write on the list New Orleans via Lakers because if it's
But I'm assuming
protected,
when they made whatever said trade, they didn't assume they'd be in the lottery. So,
Greg, what you got? I know you guys differ a little bit on Chet Holmgren.
no, I don't know if I differ on Holmgren. No, I'm kind of he's okay. His talent is tantalizing. He's not the guy I draft number one. I do worry about the size, his figure. How does he hold up health wise? If he puts on weight, which he has to in the NBA, does that slow him down? Does that change his game? I understand someone is going to and probably should take him high. He wouldn't be my guy. I'm what Chad brought up before. I love Jabari Smith. I mean, Jabari Smith's a 6'10" player who has every look and feel of a guy who's going to be even better in the NBA. He can shoot from anywhere in the court. He hit 42% of his three-pointers as a 6'10" stud. Most points, most three-pointers in Auburn history, in Auburn freshman history. He can run the break. I think he's the complete package. I laughed at, I almost wonder when I read some of these draft recaps, and I'm serious when I say this, he didn't have a great game against Miami when they lost the tournament. I'm convinced some of the people write about this, that's probably the only game they watched him play all year. Because if you're gonna knock Jabari Smith for one game against a really pesky defensive Miami team, so be it. I'll gladly take Jabari Smith number one. He has star written all over him to me. The other guy who intrigues me and who shot up the ranks immensely, and I think it was well deserved, was Keegan Murray from Iowa this year. I mean, he literally came from, I don't want to say a non-factor, but a bench presence to, you could have made an argument for him winning the Wooden Award this year. That's how good a season he had. He was the only player in the country. He had 800 points, 300 boards, 60 blocks, 50 assists. Just an incredible year. And another guy who I believe he shot just under 40% from three. I think you're going to get a hell of a player who also has room to grow because I think his game is just starting to burgeon. So he would be my other guy that I think he won't go one. I'm assuming he goes in the 5 to 8 range. I think whoever gets him is going to have a hell of a player on their hands. So Jabari at 1 for me, and I love Keegan Murray after that.
Nice. Partner. If you're on the big board, who do you pick number one?
Well, I haven't been able to handicap the draft in about 10 years. But before I ad lib, because I just thought, because I'm looking at the teams with the best chance, I'm like, somebody's gonna have a really good shot to make themselves a really elite 1-2 punch for years to come. But before I do that, is Ty Washington still the guy for the Knicks to target?
I hope he's in the consideration.
Based on our previous conversation of where the Knicks are probably going to be and who's probably going to be available.
He's probably in that range, and I think that's where individual workouts and those type of things come into play. We don't know where the Knicks are going to draft. Assuming, I forget where they're slated to now. Is it around 11 or 12? Washington's probably in that consideration. If it were me, I'd probably take him a little earlier, but I hope they don't. So they'd be in that range, correct? But again, individual workouts, and that's to be, even the lottery itself, who winds up where. The Knicks, I believe, have I think it's a under 2% chance of moving up to the top. So you'd assume they stay where they are now.
Yeah,
but it is true. Whatever teams, it's hard to forecast exactly without knowing who drafts where, because he may fill a need that someone else has.
Yeah, we were in a terrible position of not being very good, but also not being very bad either.
Yeah, I think it's like 1.8%. I saw their chance. So figure they're going to stay in that range they're at now. Yeah.
So speaking of chances to win, the top 4 teams with the best percentage chance are Houston, who took Jalen Green last year. Orlando has Jalen Suggs and Wagner. That's his name. Am I thinking of his name right? Pistons, of course, with Cade Cunningham, and Oklahoma City with Giddey. So whether it's Smith, whether it's Holmgren, whether it's Murray, whoever the case, even someone maybe we didn't even talk about, what talent that's available could match up best with one of these established young stars in the making to really vault someone into the next level?
I mean, are we still considering Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or whatever his name is? SGA?
Well,
Are we
he's
still
an
considering him a
established
talent?
star. He's an established
Oh, okay.
star. Yeah.
All right, 'cause I was gonna say like pair like Benchero with him. But I gotta think about it. Give me a second.
Greg, you got one off the top of your head?
Again, this is hard to say until the lottery. If you took, for my money's worth, first of all, if you go off the top, Jabari Smith, Bonchero, and Holmgren, they're widely considered the top 3 picks. I'd be shocked if not. I don't think you mess around at any of those 3 spots unless you have a red flag concern about Holmgren, which I could understand. I don't think that's going to happen. So the point is, you have 3 players in those that could be potentially, franchise altering type guys. After that, you'd put Jaden Ivey, and for me, I like Murray, and there's other guys after that, but I don't think you mess around those first 3, and I'll stretch it to 4 with Ivey, unless you're Toronto and see something in a Scotty Barnes that we're not seeing in someone. The point is, if Smith goes 1, Bonchero goes 1, if you're sitting at 3, you're drafting the one of those 3 that were not picked, right? So don't overcomplicate this. When these teams have enough holes to fill, especially like someone like Houston, take the best player out there. Okay. You'll work around the rest.
So you're going.
I just talked about Jabari Smith. No, he's not a guard, but he's like 6'10", can guard anywhere. He can literally run the floor. Don't worry, and the move towards positionless basketball, which has happened. I wouldn't. Holmgren, you can't do that exclusively with, although he can actually run the floor at 7 foot. I wouldn't get cute with this, especially that top 3. Take one of those kids.
So you're just strictly talent. You don't think any one of them fits particularly better with one team over another of the ones of the teams that
like top. Oklahoma City came up. Okay, but the point guard isn't the top. So no, I if I'm one of those 3-4 teams at the top, I'm taking amongst the 4 guys I mentioned, with include Ivy in that. He's the only one I could make an argument, maybe not if you're a guard heavy, but even that, I think he's a game changer. I think he's better as a pro than he was in college. So I don't. Those teams are still so far away talent wise, And again, because there's not a point guard is not going to be in those top 3-4 picks. You're avoiding that, like Oklahoma City with Alexander.
Well, Ivy should not go to Orlando.
Probably not. I mean, if you're Orlando, of anyone, and all those other kids are 6'10", 7 foot. So yeah, Orlando, I wouldn't want Ivy, but again, that's not how I'd pick there anyway. So my message, don't get cute. Yeah. And I'm like, because you're in a good spot, especially if you're 2 or 3, like the choice is going to be taken out of your hands, right? If you're sitting at 3, it's probably one of those 3 best players. Bonchero's left, if Smith's left, you take them. Don't make this, don't overcomplicate this.
Chad, you got one, or do you agree with just take talent?
I would take talent, but the one that's intriguing to me is say if Jabari Smith went to the Houston Rockets, him and Jalen Green, looks like they could be a very athletic scoring combo for years to come. I don't know if they ever played with each other like on the AAU circuit or anything like that, but that would be like 2 top 3 picks in the past 2 years for the Houston Rockets. and I think that could make them rebuild. Say like, maybe that makes them get John Wall back. Maybe he's saying, all right, I see that we got young talent here, and he starts, being a team player. And I think that could be, a nice, three-headed monster in Houston.
Chase, one last, I'm just looking at someone to add, because his stock he was already considered a lottery pick, but I think Benedict Mathurin from Arizona, he put the 30 points up in the second round game that saved their bacon that game, hit the big three to bring it overtime. He exudes just tremendous athleticism. So I think Mathurin is a kid, if there was any question, he definitely catapulted himself into the top 10. And he's like a modern perfect wing player for the NBA right now. 6'7", can shoot the lights out, athletic as heck. He's whoever gets him is in for a pleasant surprise as well. He's going to be a difference maker.
Partner, anything else to add?
I wanted to give a quick note about that Pelican Lakers pick. It is not protected. So if it lands in the top 10, the Pels are going to get it.
Big deal.
Yeah, that's a huge deal.
50 losses, it might.
One other question I'd have with that, does that also, because this does become a relevant factor, does this play into what they do with Zion now too? Because think about it, you're going to have two high draft picks coming in.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what they do with all that. I don't think it's a guarantee Zion's back.
Yeah, we'll see. Or this is, all a part of the plan. They got a whole bunch of talent around Zion now.
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So we gotta take another break, gang. But when we come back, we have some season-ending report cards to give out. Let's see who teams pass with flying colors and which teams didn't do so well. But when we come back, we're gonna get into that. Hoops Boys Pod.
Welcome back in to our final segment as we wrap up this episode of the Hoops Boys Podcast. James the Jet here with myself, America's favorite bitch ass white boy, and of course our guest experts, Greggers and The Shaddillac, rounding out the show. So, gentlemen, why don't we put on our little scholarly academic caps, if you will, and hand out some passing and failing grades. And in the spirit of keeping things fresh, I am banning anyone from picking the Lakers as their failing grade. They are expelled from this conversation, if you pardon the corny pun. Thank heavens. So let's start off with teams. Greggers, why don't you start us off? Who is your A? What team gets an A from you, and what team gets a big fat F?
Team with the A+ is Boston Celtics. There were severe questions going into the season, and all warranted. Is this the end of the road? Do they have to split up Tatum and Brown? Are they going to trade one of them for Ben Simmons? January 29th, they were a 500 team. Those questions obviously were very present with everyone, fans, media, probably even within the front office. They had a new coach. They had a lot of new elements. They stuck the course. They went 26-6 over the last 32 games to amazingly finish as the 2 seed in the East. You can go up and down the list of reasons why. Jason Tatum, who had played, I would say, poorly in the first half, was amazing the second half. Jaylen Brown was, quite frankly, a model of consistency the whole year. Robert Williams, the Time Lord, amazing in the middle, became a huge factor. Unfortunately, he's in question for the playoffs, which hurts them immensely. But the front office, I mean, you have to give them credit. They brought in Daniel Tice, who's a role player, but on the Celtics seems to find another gear. Derek White came over, guy who can play both guards, which the guard position who was the point guard, Marcus Smart, kind of the de facto point guard. He brought stability to both spots. So I just think there was the media, and Boston is not a small market. The media criticism, the worries about Udoka, the new coach, about how can we continue with Tatum and Brown. I think they just did an amazing job. And again, 26-6 to finish as the 2 seed when they were going to be out of the playoffs. They get my A+.
And we were, maybe I was, I was dumping on them plenty in the early part of the season, and they sure made me wear the egg on my face. I mean, I was calling for Tatum's head.
You know what? It's funny. This one, I watched back one of our. I'm not patting myself on the back on this one because I didn't know either way, but I did say in it, I think they need to let this play out the year because it's just the 2 kids are too talented. You don't get better just by getting rid of one of them, right? Like there's got to be another solution. So I think obviously that decision has paid off. It's paid off in multiple riches here.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, they had I believe they had the best point differential in the NBA for the season, which is incredible considering they were 500 at the end of January. So listen, if Williams comes back, do I pick them to win the title? No. Are they good enough too? The answer is yes. A+ for them.
Now, would you not pick them to win the title because you don't think they'll win, or because you're afraid of this buzzsaw they're going to likely run into against the Nets?
I would say a little both. And leading right into this, Robert Williams being out for them is a big, big factor, even in the Nets series, if assuming they get the Nets, and the fact that the Nets have had troubles in the interior. Williams is their big guy. So if he's out, I mean, I don't like their chances against the Nets without him. With that being said, they've been playing at such a high level now for 2+ months. I wouldn't write them off either. But I do think getting the Nets and the injury to Williams are going to be very tough to overcome. But with that being said, if that team bows out first round, again, you're lining up against the Nets if that happens. They've had a great season. There's no shame in that. And with a chance to go much further.
All right. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, partner.
No, I was going to say, I don't think that the Celtics are that afraid of the Nets.
Probably not.
I would agree with that. I don't think.
And don't forget too, don't forget when the Nets go up to Boston, they're not gonna like Kyrie too much there. And even amongst the players, I don't think the players have anywhere near the same hatred by any means that the fans do. Yeah. But you're human. Is there a little bit of the top players on the Celtics who want to beat him? Know that he kind of wanted to leave? Of course, it's human nature. Yeah. Not the same vitriol that the fans are going to show him, but of course, if there was a little extra motivation factor, it's there. Sure.
Chad, you got a thought on the C's?
No, I think the Celtics probably are coming out of the East, in my opinion. So I agree with Greg. A+ pick. They definitely turned it around. Seemed like they whooped up on every contending team that they played in the second half of the season. The Williams injury, may be like a deciding factor because I don't know how much depth they have at the big spots. But the way they're playing, the energy of the crowd is going to be a big one too. So I agree with Greg. I would give Boston an A+, especially with the new coach and everything, how they turn it around. And just based off the talent that they have, I think they could come out the East, and I think that would be my pick to come out the East.
One last correction. I'm just seeing here, just for the record, I said Boston had the best point differential. Phoenix overtook them by 0.1 points, 7.4 to 7.3. And that's a team who won 64 games. So point being, that's
good
pretty
company.
Darn good.
Good company.
Yeah.
Good company.
Pretty darn good.
All right, Greg, enough on the teacher's pet. Who'd you put in detention?
I wouldn't put them in detention. I'm throwing them out of the school. They need to find Sacramento.
Oh
no, they're expelled.
Totally relegation.
Expelled. Yes, they need a relegation like league like soccer does. Just a quick. I harped on this last year too. There never seems to be a direction with that team. I don't want to say you can accept the losses, but if you had some, It's now 16 straight losses, 16 straight losing seasons, that's crazy. I mean, that means you're in the lottery every darn season, even this year. So they make the trade late in the season. I like Sabonis a lot, but you also now traded Tyrese Haliburton, who was in some ways considered the best pick of that draft. Where they got him, the Knicks were, as a Knicks fan, we were lamenting, wow, this kid would be great at the guard for us. And they deal him. Once again, it seems like they are a rudderless ship, whether it's coaching, the front office, there's no direction again. They're 16 under. Davion Mitchell, I love, he's, I guess part of the deal was to, free up more time for him. But I still don't see how trading Haliburton. Haliburton's like that jack of all trades guard in a guard-oriented league. Again, I love Sabonis, but it doesn't – big picture, when that team's ready to contend again, Sabonis is probably on the downside of his – I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, and I don't think there's any clear direction whatsoever for them to get better. So they get an F. Kick them out.
Get them out. 16 straight losing seasons.
16 straight.
That makes the Knicks look like the Michael Jordan Bulls.
And again, think of the calculus on this. That means you're in the lottery every one of those years. Like, that's not, you're not a middling playoff team that doesn't get, no, you're getting top picks. You're getting every darn year. Obviously, it hasn't played out.
No.
And how many coaches, how many front office changes, GM changes. It seems like literally since the Bibby days, they've just been a complete mess.
Mm-hmm. All right, partner. Who's flying high with the A's and 4.0s?
My good team is going to be the Clippers. Although they're in 8th place right now, I still think their ability to be competitive still with mostly their two main players missing, and then also during the trade deadline going out and getting some quality talent such as the likes of Norman Powell and Robert Covington, and still keeping Luke Kennard and all those other players, and now they got PG back, and whenever Kawhi does come back, I think this is going to be a very deep formidable team in this playoff series and in years to come, for however long, they're going to keep these players around. But I think they did a real good job this season keeping the ship afloat, and now they're getting some troops back, and they're going to be a tough out for anyone.
I mean, it is pretty impressive to have stayed in it long enough to catch fire at the end, considering the fact that Paul George was out for so long and they just didn't have Kawhi at all.
Yeah.
Shad, that's your team. I'll let you add to this next.
No, I mean, I agree. The Clippers deserve an A. If you would have asked me, a couple weeks into the season, like when Paul George got hurt along with Kawhi Leonard being hurt, I would have said Clippers probably missed the playoffs, just because they have a deep roster, but they don't have any kind of stars besides really Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Reggie Jackson, he's definitely done. He's kind of been like an all-star caliber player at the point guard position, but besides that, it's a bunch of kind of B, C players. I think Tyronn Lue has done a hell of a job coaching. I think he should deserve some Coach of the Year votes right there just for keeping the Clippers where they are. But yeah, for a team, with the two best players, I think could be championship caliber players, but without them, I think they should be a lottery team. So just to be where they are right now, I definitely give them an A.
Greg, your thought on the sister team of Cincinnati?
Totally agree. I mean, if you looked early in the season, you would think there's no way, minus the extended plan, but the Clippers finished beyond that. We're not talking the 9 or 10, 12 games under 500. The Clippers finishing where they did, considering those losses above 500, that's an awesome job, plain and simple. 42-40. If you took any team in the NBA's top 2 players out, and just compare their crosstown rivals, right? Not to, again, get on that, but, you lost Anthony Davis for X amount of time. Look what happens. Well, the Clippers lost 2 guys, and they finished 42-40. So, I mean, it's an incredible job for them to just stay afloat, to give themselves a shot, and they have it. Great job by them.
Out to the Clips.
Who,
And for
who you flunking?
that sounded crazy. Who I'm flunking? I'm going. I'm gonna keep it out west, and I'm going Portland.
PU.
PU. Yes, they had a fire sale earlier this season. I feel terrible for Chauncey Billups because it's just like, I mean, he took the job thinking he could right the ship, and now they're just like yeah, just let it burn. Now that I even read earlier today that they're thinking about selling the team, so it's it's just all bad over there, and I feel bad for Dame. I can't wait till he gets out of there because, yeah, there's no place for a player of his caliber. Portland gets a big fat F+ from me.
That makes Greg's Kings look like they're shining like a diamond.
We're not talking 16 straight years here. Let's back that up.
They've been on a treadmill for like probably that amount of time, going nowhere fast.
Shaddillac, who gave the teacher the apple?
I gotta go with the Denver Nuggets. They've done a tremendous job this year. They had the second most wins in the past 10 years in the franchise. And I definitely would have expected that, missing 2 of the top 3 players. Michael Porter Jr. only played 9 games, and Jamal Murray, who's been out the whole year. It just seems like it's Jokic and just a bunch of almost seem like washed up or underachievers in the league. You got people like Jeff Green. You got Aaron Gordon, who everybody thought kind of would be better than he is. Will Barton, who's just seems like just a bench player who just jacks stuff when he's in the game. And to get this team to where they are in the playoffs, like if you were looking at them on paper prior to the season without the 2 best players, you would have said definitely this team is going to be in the lottery. They'll be lucky to even get to the play-in games. But to be where they are, they're definitely in the playoffs. I got to give them an A+ to what they've overcome and to where they are.
Right, and it should be noticed, we talked a lot about the Clippers being able to withstand the storm, not having their 2 best players. And granted, Denver at least had Jokic, but Murray and Porter are significant to kind of get through that and still not just be in the play-in, but actually have a top 6 seed.
Right, to get 48, 49 wins this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think anybody was predicting that. I think
Yeah.
we may be lucky to win 30, 35 with what they had.
Partner Greg, anything you got on Denver? Either of you?
Can't disagree. And then something I just feel like he doesn't come up enough. It goes without saying. We've already explained Jokic. He's had a beyond description season. You look across their categories. Jokic leads in every single category: steals, blocks, assists, rebounds, obviously points. But I think the other thing that doesn't get talked about is Mike Malone's a hell of a coach. I mean, to lose those 2 players, it seems like they're somewhat on the level of Toronto. They seem to, underrated players like Monte Morris. We talked about Bones Highland. They seem to get contributions out of kids, that were underrated, drafted lower, undrafted, turn them into valuable role players. You have to give credit, I guess, even the front office. I mean, Chase and I talked recently about this. I looked up at the box score the other day, and DeMarcus Cousins had over 30 points a couple of weeks ago. You know what? They make the right moves. Like Cousins can still, if you can bring a guy in who probably got those 30 minutes, 31 points in 20 minutes, you have to give them a ton of credit. They were a championship contender with Murray and Porter. They're nowhere near it without, but somehow, I mean, you have to give them a fighting chance in any series with Jokic and, what Malone brings to the table. So no doubt they've been awesome.
Yeah, and give that GM an A+ too. They know how to draft big men. They drafted Jokic, Nurkic, and they had Rudy Gilbert too.
That's right.
Yeah, that's crazy. I forgot about Rudy.
Well, Jokic is going to go down as the best second-round pick in the history of basketball. I mean, he is. And if I'm right, he was late second round. Wasn't he in the 50s or somewhere? Anyway.
A diamond in the rough.
Yep.
For sure.
We talked about Sacramento, a team that's been in the lottery 16 years, and Denver unearths a gem who's, might win MVP 2 straight seasons out of late second round. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's sick.
James the Jet, what you think about Denver?
I love Denver. Like it was said, like it's really Joker, Aaron Gordon, and Jeff Green, and they're beating teams like not night in and night out, but they're winning games, and it's hard to say like how Joker doing this with the talent that's around him, and who's to say where they would be if they had everybody healthy. So the Nuggets definitely deserve an A+.
All right, Chad, who'd you send to the principal's office? I gotta get all my little school puns out. I'm sorry.
No, I know a lot of you guys are gonna disagree with this, but I gotta say the Brooklyn Nets. I just think they are completely underachieving with all the talent that they have. I don't care like too much about the injuries because everybody in the NBA goes through injuries pretty much.
We just went through like 3 teams.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, they started off, kind of good. They were the number 1 seed, number 2 seed, and then they just kind of just fell off a cliff. They had bad team chemistry. I think they had bad coaching, bad management. Like you knew it was going to turn bad when you were telling Kyrie Irving he could just play when he wants to, pretty much. That would have left a sour taste in my mouth if I was, James Harden too, and any other player on that team, to tell somebody you could play, pretty much half the time. I mean, that's just setting up for failure right there. And then also you're trading for you traded for like pretty much a fragile player. I'll say it nicely, in Ben Simmons. Has all the potential in the world, but he hasn't played a game in like a year, and most people think he's not even really injured. He's just mentally just not there. And plus, I don't think Steve Nash, as a lot of people say, has been a great coach for this team. He just seems like he's just coach in name, but really hasn't shown much. And I could see Steve Nash getting fired after this season, especially if this team doesn't get past, I would say, second round. I could see him getting fired, just because he has all this talent and this team has, underachieved for 2 years in a row now. And
bold take.
Yeah, I mean, you have this. You probably arguably had for a good portion of the season 3 of the top 10 players in the NBA, and now you're in the playing game. And this is, it's like March Madness. It could be, you could be going home regardless. I don't care like your talent that you have. I mean, it could just be one hot day, or 2 hot days, and you're gone. And then this season is definitely a disappointment. I don't think you could excuse that. You definitely got to get fired after that. You started off very hot. You were like one of the top teams in the NBA, and then you could be missing the playoffs in a matter of days. So I give this team an F because they have all the talent in the world, and they're barely. You don't even know if they're gonna make the playoffs.
And it should be noted that at the beginning of the season, they looked like the Nets we thought they were, or people wanted them to be. Like they were coming out like gangbusters. And then the floor just fell out from underneath them, and they barely hung on at the end. So you don't think, I mean, granted, I guess probably not, because you picked the Celtics to go to the finals, or you think they got a great chance to, but like a few episodes back. But so you don't think, even if they get by Cleveland, you don't think they got any shot?
I'm not gonna say any shot, but I think if they play Boston, I think they lose. I think they could get Miami just because Miami, I don't think has the scorers to go with KD and Kyrie. For Boston, I think they can match up, and plus they have depth to give the Nets problems. So I would pick up Boston against them. And like I said, who knows? They might even not get past Cleveland and Charlotte or Atlanta. You saw what Atlanta kind of did last year when they upset Philadelphia. Magic can happen this playing game. So I think it's a huge disappointment to have arguably the most talented team in the NBA to be in the playing game. They're basically the Lakers East, except with a little bit better record.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. Speaking of Miami, I'm actually gonna go a little off script here, boys, because I was gonna go with Toronto as my valedictorian, but we spent a lot of time earlier singing up Toronto's praises, and we didn't spend any time on Miami, and they are the number 1 seed in the East. So seems a little poor form for us not to talk about Miami at all. So I'm gonna go with the Heat as my A team, because they kind of were a little re-envisioned. Like, they still have Butler, but they still have Jimmy, but he was kind of like hurt a little bit in and out of the lineup. Tyler Hero turned into quite the impressive 6-man, 20 points per game off the bench. Bam was hurt to start the season, but he came back with a vengeance, averaged double-double. I mean, Vic, they gambled on him. It didn't really pay off. He barely played, but I think Miami came up all roses on this one. They just, like, everything kind of seemed to fire, and I think Eric Spoelstra, he kind of, I don't think if he was really taken seriously when he first got the job, or not too long after he first got the job, when LeBron came to town and Chris Bosh came in, and it was like, oh, he's just coached all the superstars or whatever. But he's coached a lot of pretty otherwise average group of talent teams into playoffs year after year after year. And I think he's finally, like, starting to get his due as an all-time great coach. I think those rings were more than just him pressing buttons with all these big name Hall of Fame toys.
Hey, Chase.
Hmm?
Remember when you said Scotty Brooks is a better coach than Eric Spoelstra? That's my all-time
I said
take.
that?
Yes, you did.
What were we, 22 years old?
It was the 2012 NBA Finals. He said it's not a matchup. Oh, Scotty Brooks is going to coach circles around Spoelstra. It was on Twitter too, Chase.
I may have said that.
Now he's what, a top 15 coach of all time, whatever that list was.
Hey, you know what? I'll wear the egg. Miami ain't wearing eggs right now, but I'll wear the egg. James, Greg, thoughts
on
the new look Heatles?
The Heatles. I feel like that little spat that they had, was it last month when Spo and Jimmy Butler were going at it because they were number 1 and they fell out of number 1 because Celtics took it.
Yeah.
I think that was very important because they've been playing extremely well since then. It's looking like Bam is going to could possibly be the defensive player of the year. I've been hearing rumblings about that too as well.
Breaking Rudy's streak.
So I think the Heat always do this though. They're a really good regular season team. We just need to see it translate to the offs. Hopefully they got the right pieces now to make a deep run. But I think they're a phenomenal team. Definitely deserve an A. Plus.
Yeah, they've had a great season. It's something I noticed throughout the year about them, and I will give you credit with the Spoelstra thing, is a lot of their lineups. I remember looking midway late in the year, you were getting big games, big contributions out of guys like Gabe Vincent running the point. You had Caleb Martin, Max Struz. Like, on every given night, you felt like one of these guys is dropping 28. My point is, I think he utilized the full depth of that roster as well as anyone in the league has this year. So I think, they're one of those teams. They're like a better real life basketball team than like just someone who follows like fantasy basketball. The sum is better than the parts. Not to say they don't have really good parts, but they're a really good basketball team on both ends. So yeah, I mean, although they would not be my pick to win this, that's irrelevant. The fact that they've put themselves in the position in the 1 seed to have home court throughout the Eastern playoffs is incredible. Great job through and through.
My bad boy pick is a team I think, if I'm not mistaken, I dumped on a little bit already earlier this season, and that's the Indiana Pacers. I was thinking that they had a ton of young talent. They just needed like kind of the right kind of masterminded piece to get them all to work together. They bring in Rick Carlisle, who had a lot of success in past years in Indiana. Figure out how to use Sabonis, the Holiday Boys, LeVert, Turner, monster in the middle. Really just finally figure out how to put this mess together. And not only did they just completely bottom out entirely, but they fire sale blew it all up. And you know what? Greg spent a little bit of time on the Kings. What do you think in trading Halliburton? Hey, good on the Pacers for getting him in return, but it's still like you had what looked like a good chunk of young talent, and you a month and a half into a fresh season with a new coach, you just completely blew it up and shredded apart what was there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened in Indiana this year. I don't know why it didn't work out. I don't know why they couldn't figure it out, but talk about a PU. Indiana was definitely a PU this year.
Yeah. I think the best thing Indiana did was get Tyrese, because now Carlisle has a player who can mold and shape.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's like it's very bleak over there.
Yeah.
We had touched about them previously. They were one of those teams that, we all know is the most dangerous play to be. Are you playing to be in the 7-8 seed every year? Because you'll stay there for 20 years. Even back to the draft when they took Chris Duarte with their pick. Chris Duarte is a nice player. Looking right now, he averaged 13 points a game this year. Nothing shabby about that at all. The problem was Duarte was the oldest rookie drafted in the draft. He was in his mid-20s, which no, that's not old in real life. But the point is, unless you're a championship contender, which they obviously were not, you would think you'd trend towards going younger, like towards rebuilding. And I think they were caught in that, what are we? So I think at least it was like they waved the flag at the right point. Because I love Sabonis. I don't mean to downplay him at all. But I just think the direction of the team needed to change and they needed to start blowing it up. So I'll give them an F, definitely prior to the season. I think getting Halliburton and making a move to start to blow this up was the right move. Because you need some direction, good or bad. You can't stay in that perennial 8 spot. We all know that's a death sentence in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Partner, where are we going next?
Before we switch gears, I wanted to give an honorable mention to a team that deserves an A, and the Dallas Mavericks, because I feel like they're another team that, like, how are they doing what they're doing? You know what I mean? I think they're in 5th right now. Luka has been playing out of his mind since the All-Star break. And they're another team, like, you can't name me the second person that's going with Luka. You know what I mean? Like his counterpart. I don't know who is it. Maxi Kleber. I don't know who were named. Like
James, I don't disagree. One guy I would say though, just I've been loving him for Jalen Brunson's turned into a really nice basketball player.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he's your 2 you build around. He's just a really nice player though.
Yeah, he's a really good
helped
player.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're in 4th actually. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Mavericks.
Home court, baby.
Home court. So since we gave some report cards to teams, I want to single out players. players. I want to grade the players. So, Greg, in your heart of hearts, who would you give an A+ to this season if you had to pick one player?
Because I think even myself, we think of the Suns as they're almost an afterthought. And you look up and the Suns won 64 games this year. They lost Chris Paul for, gonna guess 20. I don't have the number in front of me, maybe more games. And I think Devin Booker on the court and even the intangibles, he's improved and matured in a big way. I mean, his scoring's up, his 3-point shooting is up, career high in rebounds, improved assists. And I think most importantly, leadership of that team. Like I said, Paul went out for a while, myself included. I didn't think they were going to tank, but by no means did I think if he missed 20 games, they're winning the West by how many games finish? 8+ games, whatever the number is. He is definitely their de facto leader. So I think from a on the court, off the court, and just maturity of a pretty much a borderline superstar, I have to give credit to what is considered the best player right now on a 64-18 team, and has put themselves in prime position to make it back to the finals and or win it. So Devin Booker would be my guy.
Firmly in place now as the leader of the franchise.
I mean, I think so. He's obviously obviously Paul's the point guard when and if he's back or when he's ready, but when he's playing, I should say. But the franchise is Devin Booker going forward. I mean, that's clear as day. They'll sink or swim as to however far he goes.
What do you think about the potential first round matchup with Cat? Ayton versus Cat.
I think Phoenix would take care of business quickly.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, they've kept this record with losing Paul for that amount of time, and that it's sooner or later you have to say, geez, this is a really, really good team. And again, they inched Boston out for the highest point differential in the entire NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, there comes a point, well, I myself included, I expected a tail off at some point. It just never came. So I don't see why at game 83 now it's going to start. Nope.
I really like Mikal Bridges too on that squad. He's playing really well this season.
They've definitely had a lot of contributing pieces, no doubt. Again, you don't get to 64 wins, just one guy, two guys. That's impressive, no doubt.
Yeah. But that boy Devin, he's a baller.
I just think his maturity. Right, last year in the finals when the series turned, I remember a couple possessions. He literally stops to argue a call, and there's a layup at the other end for Milwaukee. And I remember saying at that time, like, that's where he needs to grow up. I think he's understanding that part of the game. That's maturity, right? It's getting older. It's realizing where you need to improve. It's not points. It was the rest of his game, the intangibles, and I think he's done that.
Yeah. So you got your player with the A+. Who would you fail this season?
Well, I mean, it's only fitting we go back to the well for what feels like the 30th straight year. It's got to be a Nick, and it's Julius Randle. I mean, Randle, listen, quick summary of the last 2 years. We thought they overachieved last year. Randle played out of his mind. We all agreed he probably won't have as good a year, but he is a good player. I think this year he was way too significant a drop-off. I mean, I'm just look at the numbers quickly. He dropped 4 points a game. His 3-point percentage dropped over 10%, lower rebounds, lower assists. He just did not have a good season. And with a young, aspiring team, they also needed a leadership role of him. It was well documented this year. He had a blow up with the fans, basically throwing them the middle finger, not talking to the media for a period of time. One of the wins in the last few weeks, the young kids are celebrating half court. He basically gets the ball. He throws it over his shoulder backwards, wanting no part of any of the celebration. For the Knicks to, he's coming off a borderline, first team All-NBA performance the year prior. They need him on the court and off the court as a leader. And I don't think he gave them any of that. And I think that's the biggest reason. No, not that the Knicks were going to win a title, but his regression like in every category, and that includes off court, hurt the Knicks significantly this year. So whereas no, they were not going to win a title, they should not have been irrelevant and 5 games out of the 10th spot with a month left. So for me, Julius Randle gets the biggest failing grade for me.
You know how I feel about the Knicks and Julius Randle. But definitely this season you could see some kind of regression, and his attitude kind of like followed the regression. Like it came to a point, it's just like everybody that I know that's a Knicks fan, they just want to cut ties with him. Like we're done with Julius Randle. And I mean, he had a phenomenal season last year, but I think the majority of the fans are done with him now. And I would hate to see him go, but if you're gonna stifle the play of all the other players on our squad, then so be it. You gotta go. And if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here. That's fine.
Yeah, James, and to that point, I don't necessarily know if he doesn't want to be here, but I guarantee you when the discussions came up when he got that contract, the Knicks didn't just sign him to score 25 a game. It's clear and present. They were going younger. They needed him to be a leader. It seemed to many of us that he almost was jealous of the attention that everyone wanted Obi Toppin in the game, or if someone had a big game. He seemed like a malcontent when they need him to do exactly the opposite. Not just score. You need to, when the going's bad, right the ship, to be the voice of reason, to get them through that. And I think he didn't give them one iota of any of that. So that for me is why he gets a big F.
Yeah.
I can deal with, okay, he's not going to shoot as high from 3. You can almost make a point he was detraction from the team this year. Like that, it was just a very poor performance from him.
Agree. Partner, any thoughts on Julius Randle, our beloved Nick?
Oh, I mean, we spoke a little bit a few episodes back. Like, we would trade him, but we gotta be able to get some back for him, because is he really a cancer in the locker room, or is he just in a bad funk and we don't want to be in a worse position because we trade him,
Yeah.
Like, we're not in a great position. It would be nice to dump him, but at the same time, if we wind up in a worse position because of what we get back or what we take on, what salaries we take on, then it's not worth trading him.
I agree. Shaddillac, any thoughts?
Yeah, I can kind of see Julius Randle how he progressed for this past year. Almost seemed like he was a number 1 option to like a number 2. To me, it looked like RJ Barrett is now kind of the number 1. He also, like, the games that I've seen, he almost seemed like a little of a ball hog too. Julius Randle, like a mellow 2.0, just like when the ball was it just it just stopped and it became like one-on-one type basketball. The ball movement slowed down, and it was 10 versus 5. I'm not a Knicks expert like you guys, but I can see. I think he's maybe all about his stats, and he thinks he's probably much better than he is. He's probably really maybe a number 2 or 3 option, and he thinks he's number 1, and he gets to light up the scoreboard.
Agreed. Chad, I agree. And part of the stat hunting, glad you brought that up. I felt like in games, if he didn't shoot the ball well early, he gave you nothing. I don't want to say he quit. That's the wrong analogy, but like, he's a good enough player to make a difference in other areas. And he just didn't do that. It was like he got frustrated. It was more, Melo is a great analogy. That was my biggest problem with Melo in the Knicks at times. If he wasn't scoring, it's just jack up more shots, Jack. You can slow it down. You can offer other, he's a very good rebounder. He's actually a decent passer. He is, but he didn't want to be too many times this year. So, yeah.
Spoiler alert: there's no Knicks experts even within the Knicks organization.
There definitely haven't been any on the team for 30 years.
So, Shad, let's keep it with you. Who you giving an A+ this season?
I'm giving an A+ to Jordan Poole. He's doing great in his third year in the league. He was pretty much a nobody. I don't think anybody really knew him outside of Warriors fans, which 90% of them are fake anyway.
Oh, shots fired.
But I don't think anybody, knew who this guy was prior to the season. In my opinion, he was, all-star player. I would have given the nod over Andrew Wiggins, but I know that's not the way how things kind of line up with the all-star voting. But he seems like a legit number 2 option next to Steph Curry. I think he's taken over, Clay's place as the Robin on that team. The team was playing excellent when he was the number 2 guy. And he just seemed to kind of fit the flow of the Warriors, I guess 2.0, as most people would say, with these new younger players, with Steph, and the younger players sprinkled in. So I got to give it to him. I think he should be, a perennial all-star the way he's looking. So he gets my A+. And
That's a good pick.
The Warriors are also hoarding a lot of young talent for a few years now, so it's nice to see some of them actually coming through a little bit.
I agree. I really like Jordan Poole. Any thoughts on Jordan Poole, gang?
He's kind of looked the part. Like you figure young player, like you could see his confidence growing, and even late in games, I can't recall off the top of my head which, but there was a game they were trailing fourth quarter, and he hit, I think he hit 5 threes in like the last 6 minutes. The point is, the NBA guys can score in general, but you can tell he confidence-wise, like he is a factor now on that team. Like you can go to him late in the game, even in the playoffs. Like he'd become a trusted option. That it's not all Steph. It's not all. So I definitely think he has been and will continue to be a difference maker for them.
Yeah, for me, just going back to like Poole, Wiseman, what's his name? They just drafted Moody.
Moody and Kuminga.
Kuminga, yeah, like all this young talent they've just been hoarding instead of trading it for established stars, and it's actually seeing it flourish a little bit, and Poole turning into a reliable scoring option on that team. So it's not all Steph. Clay being what he is. Wiggins kind of, good player, but not really a star. It's nice to see someone young, and in this case, Poole stepping up to the plate and pouring in his production.
For sure. So Shad, that was your A+ player. Who you giving the F to?
F. Klay Thompson.
Staying in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Klay, yes.
Take a man when he's down.
I feel like numbers don't do it justice, but you could also see it in his numbers. Klay, I think his time with the Warriors is just kind of passed by. Like I said, I think it's time for like the Warriors 2.0. I think you goes around Steph. Maybe you keep Draymond, just because he kind of knows his role. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He does little things. But everybody else kind of from that old guard of the Warriors, it's just time is up. It seems like when Klay came back into the lineup, they were kind of just force feeding him the ball like he was, Klay Thompson of, 3, 4, 5 years ago. The Warriors, pretty much had like the best offense in like NBA history. I think Klay's time is just past. I'm not saying he's past his prime, but I think his time in this team has just passed him by. Like you said, I talked about earlier, Jordan Poole, who's emerging all-star. You have all these younger players, and he just doesn't fit that mold anymore. And you could see it as, the team hasn't been playing that well ever since Klay has gotten back. I know Steph has been injured, but even before Steph has been injured, that team took a very big dip in their production. I believe they were battling with the Suns for the best overall record in the league, and now they dropped down to the middle of the pack in the Western Conference. And I think Klay is a big proponent of that. I also think his trade value has dropped this season. I think, before the season, you could have got a haul for Clay. You could have got like something like 3 or 4 first-round picks and a couple players. Now I think you maybe get half of that at most, because I don't know, I think he's probably pushing 30 or over 30 now, and doesn't look like he's on the uptick of his career anymore. Probably could still make another All-Star game or two just based on him being, maybe the second best shooter in the league, but he just does not fit, the Warriors' athletic style, like how it's been the past couple of years.
Yeah, I can't particularly say you're wrong, because I mean I can't imagine it was easy for him to come back and get remotely close to the level he was at, but it hasn't necessarily looked right. And I think that we spoke earlier, did drop a 40 spot the other night, but I think if the time as you think is really coming to a close, I think this playoff run, however long it may be, is really gonna spell the tale of whether he will be back next year, regardless of how they're actually gonna try and get rid of him. Is obviously remains to be seen, and that's a lot of money to move. But if he can't put it together and get a nice little playoff run and look like a contributing piece, and looks like he's still part of the fray, people like Poole are definitely going to be replacing him very quick.
Yeah, and I believe if you look at the stats, like before his little hot streak of the past couple of games, I believe he was shooting below 40%.
Which is wild for Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
That doesn't even compute.
So yeah, I think the Warriors just got to kind of man up at the end of the season, do a little press conference, say, Klay was great for our organization, we missed him, have Steph say some words, Draymond, but I think you just got to, trade him.
Get more love than Frank Vogel got, that's for sure.
Man, you guys are harsh. Can I add one caveat to that?
Preach.
Okay, the guy missed 2 seasons. Like, let's remember that. Okay, no one is walking back on an NBA floor missing 2 years. And I will say this, however you look at the last little stretch or not, the last 6 games, 4 of them, he shot over 50%. A fifth, he shot 46, one bad game to Phoenix. He took over 20 shots in each one of those 6 games and shot over 50% in most of them. Point is, this guy's just rounded into form here. So, I mean, before we send him off to pasture, I mean, geez, this is not some scrub. But no, really, I mean, they did not, nor did he assume he's going to come back and be the same player right off the bat. So I just want to put the brakes on this one. Like, really, I mean, Klay is still Klay Thompson. I mean, you can't expect him to have come back and walk on the floor and be, the next coming. I mean, I'm kind of excited to see him in the playoffs, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or the last coming, as the situation may present itself.
But again, 2 years is 2 years. I'm not saying you base the franchise around it, but I wouldn't completely write him off yet either, is my point.
But if you had to choose, right? Because I'm pretty sure Jordan Poole he's probably due for money soon, right? If not after this season, probably after the following. If you had to choose one, you letting Jordan Poole walk to keep Klay, or are you going to trade Klay where his value is it's kind of like, it's not as high as it could be, but it's still like, that's still Klay Thompson.
See, the problem I would think, because of his injuries, I don't think his trade value would be high, period.
Yeah.
I mean, he had an ACL and I forgot what was the other, the Achilles, was it?
Yeah, he tore his Achilles right after.
I mean, so any team you could, would you make a move for him in the right situation? Yes, but you're not giving up the farm to get a guy who had missed 2 years and is now in his 30s, right? So I think that'll be part of a bigger picture, computation amongst Golden State, like how they structure the team going forward. Because I don't think you're going to get much for him, no matter how well he plays, because of the injury factor.
Even if you could, that's a lot of money to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to be 33 years old. So.
Yeah.
That was one of those. Granted, obviously they didn't plan on him blowing his knee out in the finals, but That contract's looking more and more just like a thank you for everything you did for us.
Right.
Well, listen, I mean, I literally, I'm just going to lead into that, they do view Curry and Clay as, the pantheon of their franchise. I mean, 50 years from now, when it's looked upon the glory days, that's like Larry Bird and McHale on the Celtics. I mean, that's really what they are, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. I understand from even a fan loyalty perspective and all that. I get it. Like, that's going to be hard to move him from that perspective. He's beloved. He's one of the franchise all-time greats. He's one of the faces, the Mount Rushmore of the Warriors. He's
up there.
He's on that list, right?
Yeah. I kind of jacked up this order, but partner.
Me?
You.
I heard a stat the other day and I did a double take at it because I kind of almost couldn't believe it's true, but I guess as Greg was alluding to it being a positionless NBA, of course we know it's more of the era of the guard now. Big men's aren't really what we used to think of them, the days of Shaq and the Dream and David Robinson and those guys, Charles Barkley. But Joel Embiid.
I think Joel Embiid just dunked on James.
I think Joel Embiid threw James' shot back in his face.
He just pulled a Mutombo.
No, not today. Joel,
Or he got a technical foul. I'm not sure which.
Joel Embiid, he's the first center since Shaq's MVP year in 2000 to lead the league in scoring.
Wow.
That's a long time. That's a long time for a center to be a dominant scorer.
So wait, he's about to get the scoring title?
He got it.
He did. Yeah,
he got it.
Wow.
So
that's big.
The fact that they fell off. Granted, they fell off a little bit. They're stuck in the 4th spot going into the playoffs now. But they were for a while. They were making a run at the 1-2 seed, and I think really they probably would have been there if Boston didn't catch fire like they did. But I really think that Embiid needs a little bit of love for kind of carrying that team the way he did, especially. Until the Harden trade, they were getting nothing from Ben Simmons, just wasting space, wasting salary dollars. Yeah. So I'm going with Embiid as my A+ player. Plus.
Plus. Does that mean he's your MVP as well?
No.
Okay.
No. My MVP is. No, you know what? I might borrow a page out of Shad's book here and give it to and go with Jason Tatum. I certainly dumped on him enough early in the season. I think for what they were able to do in the second half, I think Jason Tatum deserves a lot of MVP love. Because you can't really pick someone out on Miami. Booker's certainly going to get his share of points to Greg's love on him.
John Morant's
going to get a lot of love, and we obviously we can't give it to Giannis every single year. I guess we could, but that would just get boring.
Yeah.
Chase, Embiid for me, even with Jokic number, I'm actually giving Embiid MVP if it's me.
Really?
And I am, and there's a main reason why. First of all, without him, they're not making the playing game, number one. And all the nonsense that team and franchise had to deal with this year. I can't even imagine how annoying it got. Every press conference, every practice, can't get away from it. Every question he gets, the guy had 52, and it's, what do you think the team would be like with Simmons? Honestly, to navigate that, how I said earlier, Randall needed to provide more leadership. Embiid completely offered all of that. He said a million times, I'm not going to talk about it. No, he did. He's not here. We're going to move on. And I think the team rallied around that mindset. So I think, he handled all that media pressure, which is immense. It's Philly. That's not that's not Sheboygan. That's a tough place to deal with all that. Seriously. So from that perspective, he was like the true leader of that franchise, dealing with a ton. That was a complete mess from day one to the day Simmons came in and then said, I can't play. Just a mess. So for that reason, I give Embiid MVP.
Chad, you're a big fan of big men of old.
Yeah. I don't think I give him MVP, but I'll probably definitely put him in my top 3 for candidates. I think towards the end of the season he was, stat padding. So I think he really wanted this award for this one scoring title. But he's definitely played great all season to put Philadelphia, like you guys said, in one of the top positions, despite the players around him, despite his terrible head coach, in this position, he definitely deserves a lot of credit.
One last tidbit too, and I know we're looking at the seeds. Philly's the 4 seed. Philly, Boston, and Milwaukee are all tied for the 2 as well, right? So it's, there's sometimes a 4 seed is, oh wow, that was disappointing. They all finished for the 2.
Yeah.
They lost the tiebreaker. So
Yeah.
just don't want to lose sight of that. It's not your traditional 4 seed. It's,
Yeah.
And what I forgot, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Were they 2-3 games behind Miami as well?
They're all
right in that.
They're all 2 games.
Yeah.
Every single one of them
2 games.
2 games back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tight. So that was your A plus player. Who
my Stikino.
Yeah.
Well, I hope Greg comes after me with some fervor. I mean, he didn't like Shad's injury pick of his loser. I hope I get some of that energy too. But I mean, I kind of feel bad going after John Collins, but because we don't necessarily know if he's going to play in the play-in game on Wednesday. He has been battling injuries all year, but I mean, John Collins had a lot of buzz coming out of the playoffs last year, and got a pretty decent sized contract, locked up long term, and under 17 points. That's not necessarily doing it, injured or not.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just expected more of John Collins, and maybe that contributed to Atlanta's slow start.
Could be.
So, I mean, I feel bad going after somebody that's hurt, but at the same time, it's like you still played. You still played a decent amount of games, huh?
He's just not that good.
That's right. You didn't like him last year. You wanted them to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, how's he looking? I mean, they're paying him number 2 money, and they look like a number 2 player on a team. The team is barely in the play-in game.
Yeah.
Not trading to the Knicks for Randall.
You know what? He might be a little cheaper than Randall. I might take that.
I actually, without having in front of me, I think their contracts are somewhat similar. They're not. They both weren't max deals.
Yeah, about 100.
I think they were both 4-year. Again, without it in front of me, I think they're actually not too far off, ironically enough.
What do you think, John Collins? Am I being unfair?
I mean, I don't know. It hasn't been his best year, but I don't see anything overly egregious, like in his stat lines that's significantly off from. I do think injuries have played a role. I mean, he missed 28 games. That's a good chunk of the season. I think it's almost an incomplete for me. It's more of an incomplete. Like, what does he do in the postseason? I expect Atlanta to be decent. I don't mean go far. So give me an incomplete on him for me personally. It wasn't his best year. I do think the injuries were a factor, and to TBD.
Yeah.
F.
I think Shad would give me an F the year I tore my patella tendon. Man. Greg, you played 0 games. You didn't score a point. F.
Yo, bum. Yo, bum.
Get new knees, you bum.
Yeah. I wouldn't trade him for a six pack of Schlitz.
Oh man. So I guess it's on me, huh?
I guess it is. Round us out.
Let's round this out. All right. So the player that I would give an A+ this season would be DeMar DeRozan.
My birthday buddy.
In the month of February, get this, he averaged about 38 points, shooting 60% plus, which is amazing. That's the whole, like basically the whole month of February. And if due to injury, his team kind of like fell out of like the top spot of the East. But I feel like if they were healthy and able to compete, Lonzo, Alex Caruso, they both been injured off and on this season. Well, Caruso, but I feel like he would be in high contention of being the MVP this season as well.
He was certainly getting a lot of talk at one point.
Yeah. He's had a phenomenal season, and I don't know if they're gonna make much noise in the playoffs because they're injured, but I have DeMar DeRozan as my A+ player this season. Parno, let's start with you. Any thoughts about your birthday buddy?
Well, if it wasn't for him, they certainly wouldn't have held on to the seed they have. I mean, only 3 games separate them and Hornets.
Yeah.
So I mean, if it wasn't for DeMar DeRozan, they probably would be sitting back with our Knicks right now.
Going fishing.
Yeah. So he definitely made that team go. It's unfortunate that the floor fell out from under them and they lost their hold on the top seed. But I mean, I think DeMar DeRozan definitely came in, and I think DeMar DeRozan got it was a little bit of a reshining, if you will, of his career. I mean, he busted his butt in Toronto all those years.
Mm-hmm.
Put up stellar numbers, all-star multiple times. I think probably made a couple all-NBA second or third teams, what have you. Playing up north, and got sent out of Toronto. They go win a championship. He's sitting down in the cellar in San Antonio. They're certainly past their prime. And for him to go to Chicago and get a chance to be back in the playoffs, I feel good for him.
I also think that time in San Antonio really helped him with his playmaking too, because he had the ball in his hands a lot.
He had to.
Yeah. And you could see that kind of like showing in Chicago as well. Greg, any thoughts on DeMar DeRozan?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just did a quick glance. DeRozan finished just shy of 28 points a game, and far more important to me is he shot over 50%. This isn't a big guy with putbacks, and follow-up dunks. I mean, that's legit. He's a perimeter player. He takes and hits as many 2-point jumpers. He's not a huge three. So 50% at 28 points a game from the perimeter is phenomenal. And even just the peripheral, you don't think of him as anything but a shooter scorer at times. He averaged over 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He had an unbelievable season. Without seeing the rest in front of me, I'd have to say this is his best year, because legit, when he had that run, well, like you said in February, you could have actually at that time, I wouldn't put him there now, made a valid case for him actually being MVP at that time.
Yeah,
he was completely carrying. His fourth quarter numbers were outrageous. Didn't he have a stretch where I think he had like 3 games. He had a winning bucket in a row. It was something nuts like that.
That was in February.
Anyway, no,
crazy.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal, no doubt. Completely phenomenal.
Last but not least, Shaddillac, what you think about DeMar DeRozan?
No, he had an excellent season. He definitely was in the MVP talk, earlier in the season. He actually surprised me because I knew he was a good scorer, but I didn't think he was a great scorer. I think he showed that, this year. It seemed like in San Antonio, I don't know if he just dropped off the face of the earth or he just wasn't getting like the media coverage. But he definitely reemerged, into like a perennial player in the NBA. And I did not expect, for him to uplift Chicago the way that he did. Chicago was, I think, maybe had like one of the top, two records in the East for a good portion of the season. So it started to fall back up down a little bit, and he was, the primary cause of that. So he definitely surprised me. I definitely wanted to pick that out of, anybody. I mean, if there was like a leadership award in the NBA, I would give it to him, for this year.
Yeah.
Same token, I don't think he'd be considered like in that category, but I almost feel like you could make an argument for like almost most improved player too. I know he's not the guy that wins it because he already had good numbers, but he's taken like such a like almost to a superstar level this year. Just the jump. That's like I am with Shad. I always thought he was a good player. I didn't expect this. No.
A+ for DeMar DeRozan. And the player that I'm going to fail is play out in Miami, Duncan Robinson. They brought him back on a big contract. They extended him $90 million. He was shooting 40% prior season. This season, 40% from three prior season. This season, he's shooting 32% from three. He's also averaging the lowest points he's ever averaged since he was a rookie. I feel like if he continues playing this way, the Heat are going to be very upset that they gave him that contract. I think Duncan Robinson is looking sort of like a bust, and not like a draft bust, but like a bust. And they gave him all that money, and he's not living up to it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I was really impressed with him in the bubble on their playoff run because he's, he looked like this. The next really good stretch four just comes out, pop, like he could start, he could last up to playing starters minutes, that sort of thing. And he's just completely fallen. He's just completely cratered. Well, I shouldn't say cratered, but he's definitely fallen off the face of the earth towards how he came onto the scene.
Yeah.
So you think like the Chandler Parsons?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Bring it back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Another guy who played some skill into big money and just disappeared into nothingness. Except he did it twice, if I'm not mistaken. He robbed two teams.
He
right?
robbed the Rockets and the Grizzlies, right?
Was it the Grizzlies? I thought it was Dallas. Maybe it was the Grizzlies. I thought it was Dallas.
Could be. He's a thief either way.
Yeah. A two-time thief. Duncan right now is a one-time thief. No repeat offenses yet.
Greg, how you feel about Duncan Robinson?
So I'm like 50-50 on this one. So he's definitely been disappointing. I question the front office more on this one. He has one skill. It's shooting the basketball, even at his size. So I just mean he has not been great. I don't disagree with you. I don't expect that much more of them other than to shoot the ball. So the contract is on the front office, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think he should have ever gotten that money to begin with.
Yeah.
Not even a lot.
And I don't think like when your skill is just shooting, which his is, I could say long-term, this is probably like a blip. It's a down year. Again, I know he's not going to give me much else anyway, even though he's 7 foot, he averages under 3 rebounds a game. That's just what he is. Right.
Yeah.
So I agree. He's disappointing. I don't rule out though. Can he be a factor going forward for them? I can rule out that yes, they made a bad decision giving the money they did. That would be my take on him.
He's a really, really, really tall Kyle Korver.
He just offers nothing else than shooting, but they knew that going in. So
yeah, he's 6'10", isn't he? He's 6'10".
I thought he was like a shooting guard.
I mean, I guess
7. He looks 6'10" because he's gangly. I think he gives you the illusion that, right?
Yeah, he's long.
Well,
he's long and lanky, so he looks taller, I guess, than he is.
Well, Chet Holmgren, there's your floor. Duncan Robinson, be better than him.
I think he'll be better than Duncan Robinson. That I will go on the record. Not to hammer Duncan. But Duncan was I forgot where he was drafted, either late first, second round. But
Was he drafted? Oh, I thought he was undrafted.
that's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head. I remember him at Michigan. He was a good player at Michigan, but I got to check that out.
Well, gentlemen, before we go not off to Betty by land, let's go around the table real quick and give us some final picks.
Finals picks.
All right. I'll go. I mean, in the East, I think I said it a couple times throughout the podcast, but I got the Boston Celtics.
Mhm.
I just believe they're just on fire. Just killing everybody the second half of the season. And Tatum, I think he's finally emerging as probably a top 5-ish player in the NBA. Celtics have very good depth. They play defense, and I think they might get some favorable matchups going down the stretch. I think they match up great with Brooklyn if they happen to play Brooklyn, and I think they'll dominate any other team that they would face in that 7th seed. And I just think that this is their year to putting it all together and could be leading to like a dynasty type run for them where they win a couple championships in a short span.
They can the Boston faithful forget all about Doc Rivers' little blip on the map.
I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they got a chance, and I think they got a squad to keep this together and make the run at a few championships in a small window. In the West, I'm going to go. I want to go with the Clippers if they're completely healthy, but I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns. They've just been pretty dominant in the West too, and I think they grew up from last year. I think last year I don't think anybody really expected them to make it to the NBA Finals, and I think they got the experience now. God forbid, I hope somebody like CP3 doesn't get hurt. Somewhere down the stretch, he's kind of known for it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think they had that experience now. They've been on fire the past couple of years, and I think they take the big leap. And I think they'll face the Boston Celtics in the finals, and I think they will
win. We'll call it the Joe Johnson series.
Dan Marley.
Oh yeah.
Under Dan.
I'm honestly like I can't really fault you at all for Celtics because they are just red hot. They've just been red hot, and Tatum finally is. I don't know if he was listening to the Hoops Boys podcast and I got under his skin or something, but maybe.
We'll take it.
Yeah. I've been on Milwaukee all season. They haven't let me down yet, so I'm holding strong with Milwaukee. I'm gonna stay with them. I think after last year, they know how to do it. They know how to win. Giannis has been on fire all year. Chris Middleton's been on fire all year. Portis had a good year. Connaughton's still a good role player. Like Drew Holiday's still doing his thing. Like they just know how to do it now. I have zero concern with Milwaukee's chance in this, but I think it's going to be rough. We talked about Toronto surprising everybody. They're really good. Miami, I really do like Miami. I really want to pick Miami, but I have to stay true to what I've been saying all year. I totally agree with Shad. I think Boston has a great shot to do it. Embiid's a monster. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with Milwaukee. And in the West, this one I've changed 3 times. God, we started the season. I picked Utah because I thought they would be the Milwaukee of this year and finally get over the hump. And I'm not impressed. I haven't really been impressed by them at all. You look at the numbers; they look good, but they have a lot of brain lapse moments. And then I moved over to the Warriors, and I thought they'd figure out how to do it. Steph's on another level. He's motivated. He wants to prove he's still Steph and can still win the title. And I was all on them, but like we were saying with their injuries, I just don't know. I really would love to see Memphis do it, but they might. I don't know if they're. I don't know if they need like two of these type of seasons to really feel like they can do it. And they come back to Phoenix. I really don't want to be unoriginal because, of course, that was the matchup last year. But I think I just don't. Everyone else like picks something apart. Dallas, Denver, like I just pick something apart on every single one of them. So I guess I'm being lame and unoriginal. I'm going with the finals rematch, Phoenix and Milwaukee.
I respect it. Greg, it's on you.
I you know what? I have to stick the Nets. I just think there's another level in them. I think they have. I think that I have to remind myself of one thing. This was basically with one player, Durant, last year. His foot was 2 inches away from being behind the 3-point line. They win the NBA title. That was with Harden, who literally couldn't move, and Irving was on the shelf. I think their supporting cast is better this year. I think I don't ever want to say an injury is a good thing. It's not. But Durant had some time to heal, rest, to have fresher legs coming in. He's not coming off a gauntlet of having played the last 40 games. Kyrie can now play at home. I think timing is a lot. I kind of think they're primed to hit that next level. So I'm going to go the Nets in the East. I similar to what you guys just said, I don't even think it's being lame picking Phoenix. They've just been the most complete team in the league. They've won a stretch without Chris Paul, which they couldn't do prior. They can win now without him. They have the least amount of weaknesses, most complete team. I'll go Phoenix. And I'm gonna stick to my guns. I just think there's another level in Durant and with him and Kyrie. I'm gonna take the Nets to actually win the thing.
They better come through, or else we're gonna start ribbing you with the Nets like we ribbed Shad with the Lakers.
That's fine, but I mean, I think not making the playing game's a little different than not winning the NBA Finals. But I mean, so be it. I'll put my neck on the line as well.
It's crazy, Greg, because I have the same exact picks.
You're off Memphis?
Yeah, I'm off Memphis.
Oh.
I love them. They're like my favorite team, but I don't know. I still feel like they're too young to go all the way to the finals right now, especially with the way the Suns are playing. And I'm not gonna bet against the Slim Reaper. I just can't. A motivated Slim Reaper is probably the scariest thing in the NBA. So,
well, in his defense, he is unguardable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do realize with like James, I do realize there is inherent risk in this pick. I grant you that. I'm with you there though too. Though I think that level of play that him and even Kyrie, who I'm admittedly never been a fan of, drives me crazy. But that still doesn't take away. Do I think him and Durant together are the best 1-2 in the league? I definitely do.
Yeah.
So, yep. And I think, like I said, I think there's a juice. Like I said, there's an excitement. Him coming back to New York, he's able to play at home. There's I think if you want to call it intangibles, I think the timing's right for them. Like this is the time of year right now for them to hit their peak because they really haven't all year. So
yeah.
Granted, the matchup with Boston would be incredible, but I'm with the Nets. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I hate them. I will always hate them. I can't do it.
I hate them. I will always hate them.
I get
it.
That's all right. Shad and I will stay on the other boat, taking the field, effectively taking the field.
But it will be, if that happens, watch Cleveland. The Nets don't even make it. But that honestly, you can't. I don't recall a first round matchup if it's Brooklyn and Boston, especially in the East, because the East been down for so many years. I cannot remember a first round matchup that's like that.
Yeah,
that's some serious. I mean,
Tatum,
that's
Durant.
awful. That's win or lose. That's awful for Boston. I mean, can you imagine getting The Nets are the 7 seed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah. You're happy you lost the tiebreaker if you're Milwaukee or Philly in that. You have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gents, we have reached the end of our show, but thanks for kicking it with us. Shout out to our guest experts, Greg and Shad. Sorry. Your input is always invaluable, and we always appreciate you kicking with us on the show. If you want to hit us up, please hit us up on socials at Hoops Boys Pod at both Instagram and Twitter. Tell us what you think about our finals picks, our season grades. Give us your grades and finals picks and all of that. Shout out to my lovely co-host, the CProc. And until next time, Hoops Boys Pod. Peace. Kobe.